Swing room.
I'm fine. I can make do. I have 5 kids. I can look and find corners.
All right, 2 minutes. We'll
I know
get
how to
started.
juggle. Everything's looking good, huh?
Yeah.
How you doing tonight, Mike? Good, excellent, thank you. We about ready, folks? Yeah. All right. Being approximately 7 o'clock, I'd like to open the school committee meeting. The agenda this evening starts off with visitors, followed by approval of the minutes. We have a final draft report on the EQA report. We want to share that with the public. The only reason why it is still a draft report is that the state committee that has to sign off on it has not met yet to approve it. But we'll talk about that. We then have interview candidate for the position of Assistant Superintendent of Schools, followed by an update on school security, appointment of school nurse, appointment of Dr. Martis as a voting board member for BICO and Spoke Collaboratives, an update on the start of the school year, and then an update on Power School, and then update on defibrillators. This was an issue that Kate brought up sometime around the end of the school year. It's been studied by a number of folks. We have a recommendation tonight. Thank you for that, Kate. An update on facilities, award the bid for the 2008 musical instruments, other matters, and then adjourn. So let's start with visitors. Are there any visitors who have any comments this evening? If you do, please come up to the table. Introduce yourself by telling us who you are and then asking your question or making your comment.
Actually, can I talk?
That's, yes, that goes into the TV.
Larry, my name is Marge Oaks, and I work for Foxborough HESCO Elder Services, and I am the meal site manager for the Meals on Wheels that go out.
Yep.
And the reason I'm here is, how could I put it into words? I don't know if you experience it or not, but I do. You do so much. You try so hard, and all you get is criticism. Well, about a while back, I says, I'm going to look. I go to the meetings and everything. What a bunch of wonderful people that are out there doing for the school and the selectmen doing for the town. So I wanted to come here and tell you what a great job. Although I don't understand half of what you're all saying, but I get the idea that you all deserve 110% of all you do for the children of us. I had boys that went to this school, and I just had to come up because there's so little praising is what, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you do so hard, and that's no good for me. So I said, I'm going to start with the selectmen, and I did, and I went to them, and I said, now I'm going to come to the school committee. And once again, every single one of you do 110% as far as I can see. Like I say, you don't understand all of it, but most of what I do for the children of our town, for the buildings, everything. It's just, I'm on a trip from God. Just praise everybody. That's what I'm doing.
Well, Marge, thank you very much. I know you. Sure. Well, you're applauding Kate and everyone. But Marge, I know that you've been very active in this community yourself. I know you've done a lot of volunteer work, and I know that you see and hear lots of things. And when you sit up here, you're right. It's very easy to be criticized, and every once in a while people like yourself and others come forward and they do thank us for that, and we very much appreciate that. It was very nice of you to come down tonight and share those thoughts with us.
It's so much easier to say good job than it is to complain.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
Thank you for not complaining.
I made you all cookies.
You made Thank you, Marge.
And I know these will be very good.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. You have a great evening tonight. All right.
Thank you, Margie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you now. Thank you. Any other visitors have any other comments?
Oh, my gosh.
All right. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. The first set of minutes is July 16th, 2007, regular meeting. Do I have a motion for these July 16 minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Katie, a second by Kate. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-4-0 and 1
I
abstain.
wasn't present.
Okay. Then we have the July 27th Special Policy Committee meeting. Ms. Adair, Ms. Kaminsky, and Ms. Slattery were the only members there. Do I have a motion for those?
I'll make a motion. I'll second that.
Motion by Katie, second by Martha. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstained? 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 abstentions. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the final EQA report. We received the final draft of the EQA report, which covers the school years 2004 and 2005. Each of the school committee members has received a copy. I'm very pleased with the professionalism of the document. They've reduced it to 23 pages, and they have lots of graphs to tell the story of Foxborough as a high-performing school district, despite the scores being plateaued and their concerns around leadership and governance issues. The findings have not changed from the earlier presentation we had in June, with one exception. You'll notice on page 7 of the final draft, and I did
Pardon me,
make...
Larry, I didn't get a copy. May I have a copy?
Sure, I brought some extra copies for the audience as well, so we can put those out to there. We will be putting the draft out on our website, and Doc, I'll get to that in 1 second. But on page 7 of the final draft, they rated leadership in 2004 and 2005, which, as on the report they state, is the superintendent and the school committee, as poor, as they did overall governance. Now, you may remember that in the first draft it was needs improvement. They've changed the rating in the final draft from needs improvement to poor. The report will be finalized shortly at a meeting in Boston, which Dr. Martis and I will attend. I have asked Chris to post the final report on our website, along with actions taken to address each weakness. Most of the items have been addressed and closed since school started last year. Because this is a public document, even at this point, I've made those extra copies for people. But Chris, I know you've had a chance to talk to Mr. Rappa, who is responsible for the organization that did the audit, so maybe you might want to just update the committee on that conversation.
Sure, thank you. I did talk, actually I talked to Joe Rappa, who is the executive director of the Educational Quality Audit Group, and I talked to him this morning, and then I received an email because he had sent a letter recently that said that there are a list of communities that have gone through this process and that they were starting action by a new board. They have some members that have left the board and they've appointed, so they're back on schedule. They're meeting tomorrow, and so I called and we played a little phone tag for a few days, but I wanted to make sure that Foxborough wasn't on for tomorrow, and he confirmed that this morning. And he doesn't have a date yet. He had looked to try to get a couple of dates. The email this afternoon said he's going to be meeting with his board tomorrow. They'll come up with a list of other communities along with Foxborough that they have to meet about. So, as Larry just mentioned, this is still a draft. It will no longer be a draft when they meet and they vote to accept the report. So I think it's important to say that. I would echo what Larry has said about the quality of the report. I actually have read it a couple of times and actually know 2 or 3 members of the team that were here. I've worked with them in different places, in different ways, some former superintendents, et cetera. So I agree it's a very comprehensive report for 2004 and 2005, and I've committed to not only posting this, but putting a companion document next to it, so that we can start to look at the accomplishments that we've already made, and we've made many accomplishments already, and we'll continue to refine some of the recommendations and suggestions that they have. So And I think, and I'm really happy that they're not meeting tomorrow. We have an administrators retreat. I know I wouldn't be available, and I'd like to go so that we can then comment about what this looks like and what we've been able to do over the last year and a half, really, and what the community has done in looking at this and what the school system has already accomplished. I think that's a piece of this process, and I followed this process for a number of years now, since its inception, and that's something that many communities don't do. They just take the report and they don't act on it as much as we have. So I look at it as you do in a very positive way. I think we've made a lot of progress in identified areas that I know members of the community had also identified in the last couple of years. But having an outside group come in and take a look at that, I think has been valuable. So that's where we are with it.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
Do they require that you put an action plan together if they have, certain areas?
Well, depending on the level of need, and they can look at it and they can say, we want to come back sooner rather than later.
Okay.
We'll see what that board says. Again, it's a newly constituted board, and it'll be interesting to see what they say. They are meeting tomorrow. I think they have 6 or 8 communities and reports that they're dealing with that actually their examinations took place before Foxborough. So I think they're trying to do it in that kind of list. So I told Joe Rappa, who again I've known for years, a former superintendent, that we would be in contact, and I'm interested to see how this board reacts to some of these as well. So we'll find out.
And they took the 135-page draft down to less than 30 pages. So they really did a lot of work in trying to make it clear, crisp, concise, and I think they did that.
And that had been a criticism. I know that many communities, when you have a report that's that long, it's really hard to sift through it and find what the big issues are. So they actually have revised their process already, which I think is good.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Dr. Martis, do you know if there has been any change made as a result of what Dr. Norton submitted? She was invited to write a response. We did not see that response. So her response was going to address a number of the areas. Do you know if they've taken that into account or where that stands?
I think they've taken it into account. What they've been clear about is that they were looking, 2 years before. Mm-hmm. So I think some of the issues were also we've been working on this, the district improvement plan, the school improvement plans, the process for all of that, just as examples. And so they would be reluctant unless it was a real error in what they found that just wasn't there. So I don't see any differences in what I've read, other than they as Larry mentioned.
So it hasn't changed.
I would say though that some of her criticism of repeating things 3 and 4 times have been addressed.
Yeah.
And so in the new slimmed down version, you don't say the same things on 3, 4, 5 different pages. So they did take that into consideration. And I would say that some of the wordsmithing that she did, they listened to that as well. But I think as far as the findings that we presented back in June, those have not changed. And nor has the report really gone into any depth as to all the actions Foxborough has taken subsequent to that, because the audit period ended at the end of the 2005 school year. So that's why I think that when we put it up on the website, it's important for any visitor to the website to see the companion piece and to see the progress that's been made. And I intend to certainly invite them to come back a lot sooner than they probably would have originally planned, so that they can verify, let's say, the end of this school year, that the issues are closed, the issues are done, and that way there we'll have documentation for the residents that it's been done, not just because we said it or Dr. Marta said it, but in fact the state came back. So we're going to hope that we can get them back to close the issues fairly quickly.
My last question, Dr. Martis, what is your thought? Evidently, the EQA, Educational Quality Audit Team, remained intact. There was some talk with the governor's budget they were going to remove it because it had not been as effective as they had thought. Obviously, the legislature feels that there's still some impact. There are political items that are happening to improve and streamline their process and so forth. Do you think it's going to remain viable? Do you think it will remain intact over the next, say, 5 years, or do you think it will
Actually, I'll just speculate on this. I believe the governor will come out with a comprehensive kind of second phase of education reform package sometime winter or spring. There's a readiness commission that's already been announced, and there are a number of task forces from that readiness commission that will be working over the next 6 to 8 months. The issue that superintendents have had in general about this is the redundancy of accountability, different sectors taking different looks at school districts, and the amount of work that you need to do, clerical work, et cetera, to prepare all those documents. Now, having said that, the proposal that we've put forth is to streamline it, not to do away with it, but to streamline it. So I think it's a little early right now to speculate, although I think in the next few months we'll be seeing some changes. I would predict some changes. I don't know exactly what they'll look like. I mean, as we all know, accountability is a good thing, and it's here to stay. It's just a matter of making sure. I actually think, and again, they've evolved this program probably 4 or 5 times from a number of standards down to what we see now, and the reports from, as Larry mentioned, 135 to 150 pages down to something that is much more manageable. So it's already changed. What will happen in the next year or so, I think, will be interesting to take a look at. I think when we look at the New England Association work for high schools, that's a long-standing accountability system that I think everyone is used to. This was relatively new and was taken out of the Department of Education for different political reasons rather than for educational reasons. So it'll be interesting to see what this governor does.
Thank you for your insights, Dr. Martis.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, the next item on the agenda is the interview candidate for the position of Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Let me turn this over to Dr. Martis.
Thank you. We, as the committee well knows, and I think as some in the community know, when Dr. Norton decided that she would not like to return as the assistant superintendent, it created an opening and a vacancy for the school district. And given the fact that I've started fairly recently, we decided to put together a search process that I think was very effective, and let me walk through that. We first posted this opening on 2 websites, the Superintendent's Association website in the job site area, and the Mass Association of School Committees saw it on that and actually posted it for us as well. We also advertised in the Boston Sunday Globe in July, and we decided that we would give it a couple of weeks and to see what would happen. At this time of the year in the summer, it's usual, and I've done a number of these searches over the years. It's usual not to have many candidates and not to have many good candidates. And I think as I was monitoring this with Wendy almost day after day as they were starting to come in, we ended up on July 27th with 31 candidates, and a number of those candidates had a tremendous amount of experience, and I think that really speaks to the community and to the school system. And this is a desirable place to work, and I think just that showed that, and so we were pleasantly surprised. What I have done in the past is really what I decided to do this time in doing this whole search, and I've been I learned a lot when I was the director of personnel in Brookline about how to run these types of searches, and we searched 2 or 3 assistant superintendents positions just when I was there. And I brought the same process to Medfield and to Framingham, and have counseled many superintendents about how to do this. And what I was looking for is a wide range of interests to be on a search committee. And as I mentioned in the memo, we put a group of people together. And again, in the summer is not the most desirable time, given vacation schedules and other things. So we had, and I'll just name them in alphabetical order, some people are here, Paul Bortolotti, the Director of Technology, Diane Casilli, the Director of K through 8 English Language Arts and Social Studies, Angela Davis, who is here in the audience tonight, who's a parent, Joe Heinrich, the Assistant Principal here at Foxborough High School, Paul Jackson, who is here, our Business Manager, Bev Lord, one of our school committee members, Patty Ann Malin, a parent, Michelle McCarthy, the principal of the Borough Elementary School, Martha Slattery, who is here as our school committee member, and Wendy Wills sat in, who is the administrative assistant to our office, the superintendent's office. And quite simply, the charge of that screening committee is to find finalists or a finalist. And what I did to kind of expedite the process, knowing that we had time was relatively short and we wanted to try to move this process along, I looked at the 31 candidates and I culled it down looking for people with experience. So we ended up, I presented 9 candidates to the screening committee, all with experience, many of them with central office experience. And said to the committee, you can interview all 9, or you can work through a process and interview as many as you want. And then the timing actually worked out great. And then I stepped away and went on vacation. And the committee did just a wonderful job together. They pulled together questions. They asked candidates questions, and then deliberated at the end of each interview, and then reached consensus on one final candidate. And I'm very pleased tonight to recommend to you Debbie Spinelli, who is presently the Assistant Superintendent of Schools in Stoughton, who has had experience working in this school system. And this was a terrific consensus that this committee reached. So, Debbie, I'd like to invite you to come forward.
Did we get you a cookie? If not, I have to move these.
No,
It's too much, I'm sorry. Bev, pass them along.
No, we're
Sort of
good.
down here.
Oh, but you should invite that very nice lady back to every meeting.
So, if you want me to open it up and ask, do you want to?
Sure, well, why don't we start, Deb? I know that much of the community is well aware of your background since you spent so many years here, but just for this evening, why don't you start by giving us a brief introduction, sharing with us a little bit about your background, what you think your qualifications are, but most importantly, why you're interested in coming back to Foxborough, and then I'm going to turn it to the committee for asking you questions.
Great. Well, first I'd like to thank the committee and Dr. Martis for having me here tonight. Certainly is a nice way to spend Monday evening in August. But I think that if somebody had told me when I left here a little over 4 years ago that I would be here today, I'd say, well, I don't think so. Thank you for thinking that, but I don't think that will happen. But, you know, times change. So I would like to start by saying everyone probably knows that I worked here for 12 years, and I had a very enjoyable 12 years working here. I think I enjoyed a very good working relationship with teachers, with other coordinators, with the principals in the district, and I can speak very positively about those 12 years and the people that I worked with. My husband and I have lived in Foxborough for 27 years. We raised our children here. They went to the Foxborough schools. We know they got a great education, and that the schools are really very good and enjoy a great reputation. So I think that while I wasn't necessarily looking to leave Stoughton at this time, I haven't applied anywhere else, the opportunity to think about coming back to Foxborough seemed timely. I feel that at this point in my life, I know who I am. I'm pretty confident in who I am personally and professionally, and one of the things that is most important to me is relationships, professional relationships, and how people treat one another. And I think that to work in a place of trust and confidence and everybody working together is probably my primary goal. Every school system has a set of challenges, and always will, but I think that this system right now seems primed and ready to have everybody on the same page. And the people that I have talked to during this process, the committee, Dr. Martis, I know that there are active community members here that are interested in the same thing, the teachers in the district, the administrators, and the union leadership in the district, that everybody seems like they're really, it feels like a rebirth to me. That's what I said in the interview. I've lived here many, many years, and even though I've worked elsewhere for a little more than 4 years, I still get my local paper every week. And my husband and I still have neighbors who send children to the schools here, so I have kept abreast of what's going on in the schools, and I still care very much about the schools. So the opportunity to come back at this moment in time is really what makes it really attractive, to start almost anew with new people, to be part of a new leadership team. I'd say before now I know Dr. Martis a little bit. Can't say I know him really, really well, but I certainly did know him to some extent. And the fact that all of the people in the constituency groups in the school and in the community are ready to work together and be positive and establish a climate of trust and confidence and openness is what I'm most interested in. So very excited about that opportunity. I have been an assistant superintendent for 4 years, so I would be bringing a lot of experience to the position with me.
Maybe before we go to questions, maybe Bevy and Martha, who are on the search committee, could shed any additional light you have on why you down-selected to this one candidate.
I think when we listened to Debbie when she came and spoke to us, her enthusiasm, having known Debbie from before and what she had to offer the system, and listening to her make presentations on what we needed to do in this system, it was very easy and very comfortable for me to sit here and say this would be wonderful to have her back in the system, to welcome her back to Foxborough. When she left, there was a lot of sadness because we knew the type of person that was leaving, and yet it was a time of growth for her. Ironically enough, she's been an assistant superintendent over at Stoughton, and now she's coming back to us, and I couldn't be more happy.
Ben, any other thoughts on the process?
Debbie, professionally, was one of the very most well-qualified, but as she sat down in the interview, she knew the district goals, objectives, plans, and all of those of the schools better than I did. So I thought I better listen to this woman. And she was able to see from what her level of expertise and background was, how she could even improve on some of those, how she could be married to them, help the execution of them. And she brought several wonderful new ideas about safety and rolling emergency bags and all. She left the room and there was absolute silence. And the first person that spoke, these were the words, the wow factor. And she was head and shoulders above all the other candidates. So I have no further questions of Debbie tonight, except thank you for being so courageous. You will be, as you know, in any small community, you will be on duty 24/7. You will meet all the people who adore you in the grocery store, along with all those who don't.
That's okay.
And thank you for
I think I'm on duty right now 24/7, but my commute will be a lot shorter. So.
Yes. So thank you for choosing to come to us.
Such kind words. Thank you.
Kate, would you like to ask your questions?
Yes, thank you, Larry. Debbie, so good to have you here. I think most of us in this room and the people who are watching us know of your accomplishments, very significant accomplishments over your 12 years with Foxborough. If you wouldn't mind, though, in the 4 years that you've been at Stoughton, could you highlight some of your significant accomplishments in the areas of curriculum development and also professional development? I have to say, knowing you and yet reading your references, where they reference your accomplishments of the things that you did, both in chairing the curriculum, the access team, and your approach to curriculum development, also your approach to professional development. So if you could highlight some of the things that you've learned in that 4 years of 4+ years of growth, and what you would now bring back home to Foxborough.
Great. I will try to give you the bulleted list. Let's see. When I went to Stoughton, I would say that I said one of the first times I spoke in front of the faculty, I said, we have a lot of work to do, because that is how I view it. We have a lot of work to do. There really was no written curriculum except for about half of the high school courses. So that wasn't exactly what I expected. So I said, we have to really roll up our sleeves, because each curriculum framework has been out twice already, different revisions. So to not have a written standards-based curriculum was pretty astounding. But so we started with that. So I have chaired all of the curriculum development committees. We've done an awful lot of work in the last 3.5 years. I think it took me about 6 months to swallow and get going and say, wow, we really do have a lot to do. So we've done that. The they had no regular program of curriculum program review, so we started that cycle of that. And what was also missing was a cycle where whatever curriculum or program area that you're studying that you might want to renew or revise needs to be followed by a budget request. So we started a process by which whatever we were looking at, we would then know how much it was going to cost us, whether it was a small project or a large project, and we could budget for that in anticipation. And there had been no line item for any of that when I went there. So my first year, I'd say, was really tough, trying to follow the budget, knowing the needs of the district without having had anything in line for that. So I think those accomplishments that we did together were quite astounding. And if somebody had said we'd be in the place we are right now, I would have said, gee, I don't think in 3.5 years we can do that much work. But as it is today, we had very few projects going on this summer in terms of curriculum development. There really only are high school courses that are new or that they felt needed revising, a little bit at the middle school and none at the elementary. So in 3.5 years, we've established a written standards-based curriculum and revised some of them in 3.5 years in every single area, including electives at the high school, health, PE, K through 12, preschool, everything. So I'd say that's a big area. The other area that is just that articulation. The district did have an access team in place, which is all the people in the district who are responsible in any way, shape, or form for curriculum and instruction, and we meet about every 6 to 8 weeks and talk about what's going on in the district and do some of the work that we need to do at that, I call it the think tank type of group. So that's been pretty interesting that they have that in place, and I think a good venue for being able to talk about what needs to be put in place. I'd say school safety, I know, is an issue for every district. I co-chair the crisis team, the system-wide crisis team, which I'm not sure, I don't think exists here. We have a district-wide crisis team in Stoughton. I co-chair it with our clinical psychologist so that I deal with the school safety, physical aspects of an emergency management. He deals with the psychological, social, emotional aspects of it. And that each school sends about 2 representatives to the crisis team, and we meet regularly, I'd say every 6 to 8 weeks, and we talk about what needs to be done. We've developed a comprehensive emergency management plan district-wide. The emergency bags that Mrs. Lord are in place now and going out to the schools. That took us a while to figure out how we're going to do that. And then each building does have its own building-based crisis team. But the building-based crisis teams piggyback off of what the district has decided needs to be put in place, whether it's a plan, a protocol, a form, a new system. We've had to add some systems that didn't exist before, like wildlife issues. That one wasn't on there, we never know. But one school's had some wildlife issues. So there's all kinds of things that go on that have been really interesting for me in terms of leadership. I enjoy a great relationship with all of our district administrators, our principals, my superintendent. We've had a wonderful working relationship, and that will be something we sad for me to give up, but I will have another one here. So I think that we've had a good administrative team there that gets along, that works together. We don't have to always agree, but we definitely have a way of getting along that we can put problems on the table together and solve them and work together. So I think those are some of the highlights.
Anything else, Kate?
If I may, just
Yes.
on curriculum development. We've had Dr. Norton last year, and Dr. Alardi and the team have done some incredible things to bring us up to speed with the ELA and also math. Unfortunately, we could not do and meet the aggressive K through 12, and unfortunately, we had to break that in half. So we have K through 5, K through 6. We still, and despite the wonderful job that was done, the position was only filled half-time. So we have fallen further behind in curriculum. How will you bring us up to speed, and can we catch up, given all those remarkable things you were able to accomplish for Stoughton? How will you approach it so we can get caught up in curriculum?
Okay. I don't think you're that far behind. I really don't. I think that the first thing you do is a curriculum audit, and I did this when I went to Stoughton. When was the most recent curriculum developed? How old are the textbooks? And I asked for copyright dates. When was the most recent time anybody revised anything or looked at anything, and what do you see the needs over the next 4 years in that area? And I put everything on a big spreadsheet, and I brought that to the access team so everybody in the district can see that, you know, who has the oldest stuff, because you're all advocating for yourselves. So elementary principals will advocate for themselves, and it can sound like a hardship sad case, but if you're sitting in the same room that you see some high school departments haven't had new textbooks since 1982, it becomes less of a discussion. So I think what I was able to accomplish is by doing the curriculum program audit right at the beginning and putting it right out there, it allowed us to prioritize over 5 years who was going to get the money. And so, let's say our high school foreign language department could say, I can wait till the third year because I see other people have more of a need than me. So we all sort of got ourselves in line, and everybody came to agreement on what had the most priority. And I would do the same thing here. I don't think I don't think I'm going to find you're as in tough shape as I found there when it comes to.
Well, have you seen our review? We have approved. We're in good shape with now our
Right.
textbooks adoption, and we have a curriculum review cycle, which
Right.
we've approved. So
Right, I have seen that.
we have some of that.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's only going to maybe be a little bit of work in getting it coordinated, but you still have good people here that have paid attention to that and at least had written curriculum and have revised it. So I think if you do the whole audit at once and present it to everybody, they can then see where the greatest needs are. I'll give you an example. One of our high school Latin textbook was sold. I don't even want to mention the year it was copyrighted, but the Latin people said, but we can wait because Latin hasn't changed very much. So they now
Several thousand years.
So it was an agreement by the whole team, including high school directors, a department head, you call them here. Everybody came to consensus on who had the priority for the next year, who had the priority for year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And we've pretty much kept to that schedule. I've been able to get the money in the budget each year to address those needs in order of need. And once everybody knows it, there's not that struggle, and there's no secret either. One department or level doesn't understand why some other people are getting money, but they do. And so if they're all sitting in the room and they understand where their priorities are, when they get questions like that from their teachers or their departments, they'll say, yes, but we agreed to that. So we're up for 2009. Whatever it is, they know ahead of time, and there's no secret about it. There's also everything planned in advance. So it's not who gets in line first.
I really like your approach. And I promise this is the last item. You have done a lot. You've been involved with professional development here at
yes, I'm sorry, I
Foxborough.
didn't answer that
You've
question.
also done a lot according to your reference of professional development in Stoughton. Could you just comment on what you think, based on your knowledge of Foxborough, what kinds of things you could bring here and what you would look forward to doing with professional development?
I think Foxborough always did a good job with professional development. So I think that my belief is that you have to have, I call it the smorgasbord, a big menu, because not one size does not fit all. The good thing about this school system is you have a lot of time devoted to professional development, more so than other districts, so you're already starting from a good place. I think you have to have a wide variety of opportunities available. And I think the more you can do on-site, convenient, low or no cost, the better. I mean, that is our obligation, so that teachers can have options for recertification that are low or no cost and are convenient. So we offer in Stoughton, which I know Foxborough has the same philosophy, very similar, on-site professional development graduate credit courses that they can take locally. If they want it for PDPs, it's free. If they want to pay the extra fee to the college for graduate credit for a lane change, they can do that. I think you have to offer them in the summer, and you have to offer them school year courses. Might be different ones, but people can enroll in the ones that are most convenient for them based on their personal lives and their family plans. We have full professional development days here, so that's a good vehicle. After-school workshops. We used to do some short ones here. We call them just-in-time workshops. That's a great concept. So if people have a need for something, you can do it quickly. You don't have to wait for a professional development day. So I think the larger variety of options that you offer, the better it works for teachers. And I would want to continue that same thing here. But I know that you do have that philosophy, so that would be an easy fit.
Thank you for sharing all that, Debbie.
Katie?
Well, you answered a lot of my questions already, but I do have two more. Having been here in Foxborough and left, and thinking about what you already know about Foxborough, what do you, and this might be a very broad question, but what do you see as being the biggest challenge for Foxborough, for us moving forward in this district?
I would say probably no different from any school district. Communication and trust. I think everything else comes from that. That if you believe in the people who are leading you and you know who they are as people and you trust them, you have confidence in them, things can get done quite easily. And I think that people, that's what everybody wants. It doesn't exist everywhere, that everybody has that trust and confidence. But I think the work is challenging. It's any job in education today, I don't care who you are or what your job is in a school or a school community or even at the school community level, they're all really tough. Every job is really tough. Teaching has never been tougher. Administration certainly has never been tougher. It's probably never been tougher to be a school committee person. But I think the work can be challenging and can be hard, but if people trust each other and have confidence, then it's easy to get the work done. It might take you a little bit longer than sometimes you plan, but if everybody is on the same page in their thinking and in their ability to work positively together, that's how it gets done. It's when people throw roadblocks in the way or aren't open and honest. I don't expect people to agree with me all the time, but if we trust each other, then we'll listen, and you might change my mind too. So I think that in the 4 years that I've been in Stoughton, it doesn't matter who you ask. I've never raised my voice at anybody. I've never spoken to anyone in anger. I haven't always been happy, but my job is to continue that dialogue, and I have some sayings that I kind of go by, and it is what it is. And I know sometimes people get upset about really small little things that they think are going to be awful, or they think is a real issue. And when a teacher came to me one time and was all upset about something I thought was pretty minor, and said, "Oh, it's so upsetting, and you're going to be upset." And I said, "You know what? Nobody died. It's fixable. It's fixable." So I think if you have that kind of a relationship where people know who you are and they trust you, that's the goal. There will always be things that will be challenging, and there are things you have to tackle that are tough. I think I've gotten really good at having difficult conversations. And I would say, if you had asked me that question going to Stoughton, I would have said having the difficult conversations will be my greatest growth. I think I've gotten good at that. So I think for me, the greatest challenge will be to come back to a place that is familiar yet not familiar. I mean, 4 years later, every school district changes, every town changes, and it's not the same district that I'm coming back to, nor should I assume or expect that it is. There will be some familiar faces, but I can tell you there are a lot of unfamiliar faces in the last 4 years. So for me, it's to not assume that I know the district because it's different, and to be able to make that change myself, to come back to something that feels familiar but yet is relatively unfamiliar. And I think the challenge will be for Dr. Mattis and myself to be the kind of administrative team that people can get on the train and trust and go behind. I don't think it's something that I will face alone as a challenge. I think that's something that we will share. And I currently enjoy a wonderful relationship with my superintendent, Claire McCarthy, personally and professionally. We get along, and I think that brings a lot to the table, and I expect to have the same relationship with Dr. Martis. And I think the challenge for us is that we're both a little familiar with the district, but yet it's new. So I think that will be it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Kate?
My other question, just one of the your references were glowing, and one of the things that seems to kind of run through them is your knowledge of data and data analysis. And I was very excited to see that because, of course, I think there's been a lot of discussion as a school committee in the past year looking at MCAS, looking at how we use data. And I was hoping that maybe you could just give us an example from Stoughton as to...
I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah, I have full confession, I love data. So that could make me a geek or a nerd or whatever, but I do love it. I find it fascinating. I don't always know what it says to me. When you look at it, I'm not always sure what to make of it, but I love it. Now, other people hate it, and they'll say, I can't believe you love it. I can't believe you love data. But I really do, because I'm not sure exactly how you can make decisions without it. Because I'll give you the one example I'd like to give you is that a lot of people make decisions based on what they believe is true or what their perception is. So we had the perception at the middle school in Stoughton that our 8th graders' student achievement was low, and particularly in math and science. So one of the suppositions was that we have a lot of children moving in the middle school years from other towns, it seems to be, and our supposition was one of the contributing factors was that we're getting kids coming into the middle school that we can't quite catch up to speed by 8th grade. They're not the kids we've owned since kindergarten. So I had a data partnership with Boston College. I called them. I said, I have an interesting data project and see if you can help me with it. So what I did was I took our grade 8 MCAS student achievement in math and science, and the next year I asked them to do it for ELA, for 7th grade ELA, but the first year was math and science. And I asked them to correlate that data with 7 factors: years in Stoughton Public Schools, socioeconomic status, most recent report card grade, prior MCAS scores, ethnicity. I'm going to think of the other 2 in a second, but 7 factors that we wanted to know. Was there any relationship? Were there any correlational factors between the kids who didn't do well in 8th grade and some of the other characteristics that they might hold? free and reduced lunch. I think I said that socioeconomic, so I got to continue to think of the other two. So what we asked, it took me a long time to accumulate all that data. And then I sent it to them, and they did their analysis and sent it back in a really nice report, first for math and then for science. And one of the suppositions or preconceptions that it totally busted was that the kids who had low achievement in grade 8 were the kids that we owned for the majority of their public school experience. They were not the move-ins. So there was a very low correlation between years in Stoughton and their MCAS scores. Some of the things that did correlate highly were socioeconomic status, that was one of them, and prior MCAS scores. So one of the things that we started looking at is, of all of those factors, which ones can we now say to ourselves, you know what, they really don't contribute to what, everybody had been saying it, but it didn't bear out. So now that we know it doesn't bear out, what can we do something about? So we started looking to track kids, not track kids, I mean in classes, but to look at data, formative assessment data in prior school years, in elementary and up before 8th grade, to see, can we identify the students who are likely to not do well, and can we intervene sooner, rather than just get to 8th grade and we say, oh, well, see, we knew that. We knew they weren't going to do well. Well, we didn't know they weren't going to do well. And to see if we could offer extended day services to some of the kids who maybe need a little extra attention instructionally, and we were able to do that. So I think I commend the middle school in Stowe for all the things that they've done, that we've done together. Say, you know, everybody contributed their ideas. They weren't all mine, but it's like, well, what can we do about this? What can we do about that? And so data, I think, can inform you, can help you make decisions. We did that youth risk survey, you know, to look at risk and protective factors for drug and alcohol and tobacco use. And one of the things we found was that kids at the high school identified very strongly with their school through extended activities, through extracurricular activities, through sports, through music, through other clubs that we offer. The middle school, because of budget constraints and budget cuts, there wasn't anything to offer at the middle school after school. There were no clubs, there was no intramurals, there was nothing like that. And what we found in that survey was that kids didn't have a strong identification with their school. And we know that it's those extracurricular things that they identify. So we're able to put back in the budget a year and a half ago things that could fund clubs, and that was the middle school principal and assistant principals that did that. They said, okay, if that's true, then we need to get things in. We now have intramural football. We have all kinds of things going on at the middle school to help kids identify with their school more, which is a protective factor for poor decisions in the future. So I find it interesting. I never know what it's going to tell me, but sometimes it doesn't, you're not sure what it tells you, but at least it's interesting to consider.
Thank you.
Anything else, Katie?
No, thank you.
I guess I had a question. I thought it was interesting that after 12 years here, all your references you took from outside of here, but it would have been easy to draw upon the people that knew you here. And the references that you submitted, as everybody talked about, are just absolutely phenomenal. And I think that, I hope they're public documents, because I think if the public were to see those kinds of comments about an individual, you should be very proud.
Oh, thank you.
You'd be very, very proud. And I think that when people look at the kinds of people that the school committee is trying to bring to the table, like Dr. Martis and yourself, it is important. And Dr. Martis, when we interviewed him, brought his evaluations from the last 3 years. He brought all this public data that people could see in an open way. And we're trying very hard to be transparent. So I commend you for bringing us a view of who you are since you've left, and not focused on the view when you were here. But you made one comment tonight that's interesting to me. One of the passions that I have, and I've struggled a little bit here in Foxborough with some of the folks that work here, is I believe that our educational system needs to change, and it needs to change dramatically. When I look at the global economy, when I look at how fast technology is changing, and I look at how children learn differently today than just 10 years ago, I think we have to look at every aspect of what we do. And so it's easy to say, well, Latin hasn't changed very much, so we can wait on the new books. And it hasn't changed, but the way one might learn Latin would change. And so we've had lots of debates here in the last year about how people learn, how we go about looking at a new program, we bring the new program in, going out and looking at other communities first and seeing what were the problems they had bringing it in so we don't make the same mistakes, lots of that kind of a thing. So I'd like your view on how easy do you think it is in today's educational environment to create the kind of change that's going to be necessary to keep the United States at the top. We are falling behind India, we're falling behind other parts of the world, and education is not valued today in America at a level that it is in other parts of the world. And since our children that are starting school today in the first or second grade are going to be facing a very different world. So if the educational system is slow to change, reluctant to change, if you agree with that, share with me some of your thoughts on how do you go about building the case with all of our folks, whether they're right out of school or they've been here for 20 years and everybody in between. How do we build the case to help people have the courage and have the confidence to question everything we do in a very positive way and come up with new ways of doing things?
That is a great question, and a complicated one. I don't think it's going to be easy at all, because I think that none of us here, especially if you're in my generation, I don't think any of us can envision the economy that we're preparing kids for, or the world we're preparing them for. I mean, any of us who have children know that, that technology outpaces us pretty easily. So we have to get people in to teach children. Each of us individually can't do it. But I think that I read a study about 6 months ago that said the pace of change, I can't remember the exact years, but in the medical field, like by the time they realize that something is good and works, it was under 10 years for the medical community to implement it. In the educational world, I think it was 30 years. And I was so dismayed by that. And we had some discussion. I remember I was with a few people that I work with, and we had some discussion about, oh, do you think that could be true? And everybody said, it absolutely is true. Look at the journey that we've been on. It really is true that it takes that long. By the time you implement it, there are about 100 new ideas out there. So I think that there's a tendency in education to say, that's the way I've always done it. So, if it's tried and true and it's worked for me, then I'm not going to want to change anything or do anything new. I think that innovation really is the key. People really have to be willing to take risks. We say that about children all the time in the classroom. I want my kids in the classroom to feel comfortable taking risks. And it's okay to be wrong. I want them to challenge themselves, take the risk, even if it doesn't work out. But as adults and educators, we don't always own that philosophy ourselves. So I think it's up to us to say innovation is good. There are some school districts in Massachusetts that are very innovative. Some of them that might enjoy a good financial picture, and some of them might surprise people that actually don't. But I think that innovation is the key, that it really is good to try something. If it doesn't work, that's fine, but you have to be willing to try something new. And I find it often in discussions with educators that we want that of children, but we don't necessarily tackle that ourselves. So I think that there can't be any kind of consequence for trying something that really looks like it has merit and then it doesn't work. I think that is our job, to encourage that kind of innovation, because that's what everybody does. And if you look at anybody who works in the medical field, they're always trying new things and see if they work. So I think we have to apply that same thing to education. I think it is a great challenge. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people aren't going into education today, because they're afraid that the challenge is so great they won't be able to meet it. But our kids, we will not recognize the world that the children who are in elementary school now go to work in. So we have to always try to anticipate what it looks like. What does the vision look like ahead? And just try to take some small steps toward moving toward that challenge. I think it's really difficult. I don't think there are any guarantees.
Well, I think two of the things you said earlier tonight are very important to do that. And one is communication and one is trust. We have to have an environment where teachers feel comfortable expressing differences of opinion, feel as though people will listen. And when you're right out of school, you may have a lot of ideas that maybe folks with a lot of experience don't want to listen to. And maybe if you're right out of school, you don't want to listen to the folks that have 20 years of experience. And so part of what we have to do is create a community that first of all has a vision that we want change, that we recognize the world is changing, and if we don't change the process or the system, our children will be cheated. And I don't want that. And so if we can help all of our employees in the district understand and believe that the world really is changing very quickly, and that we need to sometimes tell the emperor that he or she has no clothes, that we need to do things very differently, and that it's okay to do that. And that when we look at ways of teaching, I still find it interesting that we buy all these textbooks, when in fact it'd probably be easier to buy every student a laptop and have the textbook on the laptop, and they carry the laptop, not all the books. I mean, I don't know what the future brings for us, but I do know that if we can't engage the 330 or whatever number of employees we have across this school district, if we can't look outside of education for ideas,
Oh, absolutely.
I find that the educational field sometimes likes to look just within itself. And I think we have to be willing to look outside. And when we do that, we can encourage, hopefully, a spirit that allows Foxborough to lead the charge within Massachusetts and maybe the nation in change. We've got some wonderful thinkers in this community, and I really think that you're not just articulate. You know, you're bright, you've got great communication skills, and I see you as someone who can help us really reach out to all the employees, build that case for change, and create an environment that over the next 3 to 5 years can lead the pace of change across Massachusetts and across the country. And I think we need to do that. And I think the students of this community, the parents, the taxpayers deserve a school committee and an administration and teachers that are willing to question absolutely everything that we do and every way that we do it in a positive way. So I look forward to your joining our community and driving that change that we know we need to have.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your comments on why my references were current and not old ones. I don't think I'm the same person I was when I left 4 years ago. I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed my time in Stoughton. I've had the opportunity to work with great teachers and great administrators, and I've learned a lot from them, and I'm not the same person. So it didn't even occur to me to get references from people I worked with in Foxborough. So when you said that, I was a little surprised. It never even occurred to me, because I thought it should be people who could speak to what I've done as assistant superintendent, because that's what you're looking for. So I was very pleased I was able to get so many, but I think they are public documents, so I think that I don't have any problem with anybody seeing my references. But I think that it just wouldn't have occurred to me to get references from people who knew me in Foxborough.
A lot of people would have gone to the good old person's network for those, and you chose not to.
I'm not
I think
a good
that's
old
very
person.
commendable.
I think I have, I'm a good old person. I have a passion for curriculum instruction, really, which is why I'll never be a superintendent, because I commend Dr. Martis on his skills that it takes to be a superintendent, but that is not a goal of mine. I want to state that flat out. I said it when I went to Stoughton. I meant it. I'm saying it again here. It doesn't match my interests or my skills, to be honest. I love curriculum instruction. I'm passionate about what we do in terms of teaching and learning, and those are the conversations I really enjoy. I still teach a graduate course. I won't be this year, but I still do teach a on-site graduate course for teachers. I had 37 Stoughton teachers enrolled last year, and I had a fabulous time. So I still feel like I'm a teacher at heart, and I still feel like my job is of service to teachers and other colleagues, and that is what I would really most enjoy spending my time doing, is talking about teaching and learning and what are some innovations that we can try and really be, as you said, a district that others can look to and say, well, gee, they tried it. Right. And I think I'm in an interesting situation, because when I went to Stoughton, I was the lone candidate that went to the school committee then, although I don't think that's what they intended either. So I find myself in the same position here, and I want you to know that while I am certainly happy I'm the lone candidate at this point, I do feel I should earn it. So I hope that, based on my earlier interview and tonight, that you feel I've earned it, because I do feel that it should be the right person at the right time, and it should be so for me, and I feel it is. So
You've made a very strong case for that, right?
Okay.
I think we can determine that fairly quickly. Dr. Martis, what is the motion you're going to want this evening?
Before I do that, I'll pick up on what Ms. Spinelli just said. One of the jobs that I have is to build the strongest leadership team that we can have here. And Debbie is a very important part of that leadership team, particularly at the central office level. So I want to say that I'm thrilled that she applied it, and I'm thrilled that she went through the process, and I agree. I think the process was a very, very good process that Debbie rose to the top. So I would like to recommend that the Foxborough School Committee appoint Deborah Spinelli as the Assistant Superintendent of Schools pending successful contract negotiations with me.
Do I have someone to make that
I'd be
motion?
happy to make that motion.
We have a motion by
For the four of us.
we have a motion by Kate and a second first by Beverly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. You have
Thank
your...
you very much. I really look forward to working.
Thank you. It was said earlier how difficult being on the school committee or being on the Board of Selectmen or being a superintendent is. After reading the newspaper coming back from vacation, apparently it's tough being a police chief also. So the next item...
Did Monty bring you cookies?
The next item on our agenda is an update on school security. I'd ask the chief of police to join us as well, because he's been a very active participant. Before we start this, I do want to make the public aware that the level of cooperation between the municipal side and the school side, we've said this over and over, it's getting better and better and stronger. This is a tremendous example this evening of the cooperation between the police department and the community and the schools. Later we'll see the same kind of cooperation between the fire department and the schools when we talk about Kate's suggestion on the defibrillators. So I just want the public to know and how grateful we are for the amount of time and effort that the public safety officials within the town of Foxborough have devoted to the schools in the last few months to help us deal with a number of tough issues. So with that, let me turn it over to Dr. Morris.
Thank you, and I want to also reiterate that, and I want to thank Chief O'Leary for right away. I mean, just right away when I started, just being available all the time for questions that I had, for insight into the community, and you know, we've known each other for a long time, and it was great to reacquaint I think it was at Founders Day actually that we were talking on the streets in the Common and reacquainting, and it's been great because just as Larry said, what I'll articulate and what I want the chief to comment on is it really speaks to that level of cooperation. And just so that the public understands, we one of our charges early on as a school district, and I also want to mention Paul Jackson's work on this as well because he's been instrumental, and the three of us have really been looking closely at these issues and then bringing in other of our administrative team, and I know the chief has been bringing in a lot of the talent that he has available in the police department to help us with this. But I see this in really three different ways, and I'll go over each one, and I'll stop at the end of each one so that we can have a discussion and then go on to the next. But the first one really has to do with looking at two-way radio communication, and the chief really took this one on and used the expertise that the department has to make some recommendations to Paul Jackson and to me. And we've developed a plan to purchase 25 two-way radios and a base station for our bus fleet, and this will be a tremendous upgrade for us because it'll give us the ability to communicate among the buses and us, and also with the police department. The radios will be dual channel. One channel will be the existing channel, which will be used for daily activity. The second channel, which is new, will be the same channel found on the 12 portable radios that would be used only during an emergency. So it really gives us enormous impact in being able to communicate among all of us at any given time. We are planning to purchase, in addition to, as I mentioned, 12 two-way radios for our schools that are portable and very powerful. Also, a new antenna will be installed at the Ahern School and here at Foxborough High School. Plus, we would utilize our existing tower off of Belcher Street that will extend the range of the radios and reduce the dead spots. We believe that this will give us a state-of-the-art internal communication system for our transportation program and for our administrators. Again, I have to say this again, our work with the police department has been key to purchasing the best and most effective equipment available. As I mentioned, the total expenditure for this, all of the radios and the base station and the antenna that we need to enhance our communication is $21,890. That, Paul, help me with this. We were talking about the building use.
Building rental?
building rental.
Yes, building rental.
Revolving fund to be able to utilize that. And Chief, I don't know if you have any more comment. You may, I know you were talking earlier about your radio person who has sleepless nights thinking about the best and the ways.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate. For over 30 years, Foxborough has benefited from the technology knowledge and radio system knowledge of Dick Wright. Dick is Assistant Director of Civil Defense or Emergency Management as we know it, and he's been working on the police radio system even prior to my arrival as a patrol officer here in the community. And he has spent a tremendous amount of time in fashioning a package that would provide the highest level of service for this radio system that the school department would have use of, both on a day-to-day basis as well as during critical incidents. And I feel that his recommendations will give the school system an additional layer of protection and response capability. They have spent a lot of time on it. The costs that you see in front of you have been refined. He's met with different vendors, along with Sergeant John Hannon and my staff, to try and develop not only the best technology, but the best price point on the purchase of these systems. So again, it's their effort that I've been able to share with Dr. Martis.
Now, at one point, we had talked about we would purchase this, I'll say the 12, the second group, and that the police department would have use of those throughout the year, and that when we had an emergency, you folks would have them here for us, and that would be another way that the schools and the community could work together. Is that still in the plans?
Yes, it is, Mr. Harrington. We've made the arrangements to develop the package so it could be delivered at the spot of any critical incident that we have in the community, whether it was school-based, which is our intention to have that available as a primary, but also during other events that the community might need additional communication resources.
Yeah, and I think the key to that, just to pick up on that, I think the key to that is that the police department has the expertise to make sure that the radios continue to function and they're not something that we would have, on a desk or something that we might tend to, because we don't have crises regularly, that we might tend to kind of put aside or to make sure they're just simple things like making sure they're charged, to make sure they work very well. So that I think that's a key piece to the plan that really makes a lot of sense.
And the selectmen are aware and support this? Are you, or do you know?
I have not shared with the selectmen. I've been talking with the town manager.
And he is supportive of our letting you use
know
equipment?
Of what projects we're working on with the school system.
Okay. I think it's important for the community to see this relationship and how we can leverage off of each other, because that's how the taxpayer wins the most from that standpoint. Questions from the committee?
I have a question. Now, we had purchased some base two-way radios, so that what you just described, Dr. Martis, and what will be held, those two-way radios, the 25 two-way radios that we're purchasing in addition, they will be kept by police, but or
not the bus.
That's
25 are for the bus, 12.
okay. I'm sorry, 25 for the bus, 12. So we still have, though, that's for a district crisis. That's part of our plan. But we still have our building crisis team. Now, we do have working radios, and I know, Mr. Jackson, you spent a lot of time making sure that we had that prior to the end of the school year, that we had working two-way radios both at the high school and at the Ahern. Are we all set there, or will we need to do anything else to purchase or add on to what we have for the building, individual building safety?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're all set. The two radios that we have purchased are relatively low cost, and low cost in terms of, I think we paid $40 a piece for these radios, so that as time goes on, if we decide we needed one or two, we're not talking a tremendous amount of money. but I think we're in good shape right now in the buildings.
So each building has, I forget the number approximately, was it 5 or?
We've purchased either 5 or 6 for the high school, so yes. And those would be used for internal communication, non-emergency, routine, day-to-day communication. And then they also, I think, will ultimately play a role during a crisis situation. And the 12 radios that portables would in fact arrive at any of the 5 schools in the event we did have a crisis at the school, and the emergency radios would then be used at that point. And they very well might augment the low-dollar radios, two-way radios that we already have purchased.
And that was my next question, because I'm a little, sometimes technology deficient. So will we know with this system that both our building radios as well as the emergency response, I know we've had some dead spots both at the Ahern and the high school, and those have been worked on. With the additional antennas that we're putting up, will all of those radios be able to communicate with one another?
Actually, Kate, we've been talking about the parameters for developing that. They will not. And the reason being, the radios that are building-based are on, let's say, public general frequencies, where if we're having a critical incident within the schools, there are some communications that we want to keep tactically independent, and we don't want the public or even participants that have initiated the crisis in hearing our communication flow. Those radios that are building-based, in my conversations with Mr. Jackson, would be utilized for support issues to provide and widen the net, perhaps, of people that would be getting information. They, in turn, would be passing on to other groups in the community that are stakeholders, whether it is parents that come to an assembly site, a methodology for contacting the media to further provide them with correct and factual information as opposed to their rumor and innuendo. And I think that is how I envision us using 2 separate and distinct systems, but both will be utilized in a critical incident.
So we will have 2 separate distinct systems that are both going to be in working order?
Correct.
Because
Now, one of the questions we've had in the past is that we have a crisis and everybody runs to the crisis, and then there's nobody in the central office that knows what's going on, and that's where all the phone calls are coming. Will we be keeping one of these in the central office so someone like a Mr. Jackson, for instance, or the assistant superintendent has an idea of what's going on, so at least as calls are coming in, they understand the situation?
Well, in my working with both the superintendent and Mr. Jackson, we want to make sure that the flow of information gets to people that have even peripheral roles in a critical incident, so that people that have to provide information to the public, as I can imagine during the bomb scare spring that we had, the central office was getting and fielding calls, but perhaps not having at that point in time important information that they could respond appropriately to parent concerns.
So this, we will have one of the units in central office, so central office will be informed now going forward as part of the plan.
Yes.
Okay. Questions from other community members? Bevy, any questions? Katie? Martha?
Just the idea of them having access to some of the radios, because they're going to be the first responders anyway, so they'll be bringing it with them.
Yes.
And people need to understand that they will come with them.
it's a good plan.
Do we have a motion to approve the request of $21,890 to be transferred from the building rental account for the radios? Motion by Martha, second by Katie. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, Chris.
Thank you. The second part of this is, I think, just as exciting and will be just as helpful. Again, through a tremendous amount of cooperation, Chief O'Leary and I, along with Mr. Jackson and others, have been looking at different vendors for really, I guess I would call mass communication purposes. And We've analyzed and assessed the best communication system to bring up-to-date information to every family and community member in a very short period of time. After analyzing a number of these proposals, we have decided that Connect Ed and Connect CTY will give the school system and the community an opportunity to reach all citizens of Foxborough within minutes. For example, if the school system needs to send a message to all families on their home telephone, business telephone, cell phone, as well as an email message, I can connect to all families within 10 minutes with a message that I can create from my cell phone at any location. So this is really an enhanced technology that I think will be great to take advantage of. These messages, and then as we roll this system out, these messages can also be sorted by school, by level, school level, elementary, middle, high school, by program and/or activity, and can be sent by principals and others, again, once we develop the entire system. It'll take us a few weeks to work through the training component in all these protocols. Our target date for full implementation that we discussed last week on both the town side and the school side is October 1st. And total cost of this program for the school system in the town is $28,749. And again, we would be looking at our building rental revolving account in that. I'm very, very excited about this technology and this opportunity, because I think that it will really give us, and again, we're looking at some of the scenarios even that we mentioned earlier, just thinking about the bomb scare last year. I could get a message to all of the people here at Foxborough High School, all of the families within minutes, just explaining what was happening. And then at the same time say to them, I will get back to you in 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes with an update, so that people can then begin to understand that we're really working on this and we know what's going on, and you know, the communication with the chief and his officers in something like this. The principal of any of the schools, once we finish the training in this, could also do something similar. So this product, which is one company, but they split it out with the school, with Connect Ed, and the municipal side with Connect CTY, is, I think, very, very exciting, and something that we should take advantage of.
A couple of questions for you, too, on that. Number one is, how does the data get into the system, i.e. the cell phone, the home phone, the email, et cetera? Who's responsible for entering the data accurately?
Actually, the bulk of it falls back on our contractor that we would be signing the agreement with. And it would also call for them to market it, to alert people that have unlisted phone numbers, whether it's cell or landline, various email accounts that they might want contact on. So it's dependent on our public, so to speak, for those that have restricted information to the public, to realize that this company has invested a tremendous amount of technology and expense in protecting the information that they receive so they don't get hacked into, which is, I think, a fear of many people. I don't want to provide anybody, you know, my private cell phone number, because then they'll be selling it on the web, or you know, they'll be using my information in a fashion I don't want. So they've developed a fairly intelligent methodology, so to speak, on getting people to enroll. Any publicly known databases, such as information from various phone companies where we have, many of us have listed phone numbers, those would be automatically downloaded into the system. One of the issues that is a little bit different between the school and the town side is much of the information may be garnered from your school package that you have in terms of school information that is collected by the school system and has a higher level of protective rights on it. So we analyzed a group of different vendors that offered packages. We considered package A from one company and package B from another, you know, what variables are the best. And as a group, we decided that this particular company offered continuity of service between both the government side and the school side, as well as higher recommendations in, I think, user-friendliness, as Superintendent Martis mentions, from a cell phone, you can create, with password-protected input, a particular message, even though you might not be in the community. And I think the impact, having the superintendent of schools or one of the building principals putting out a message so that they would recognize your voice to parents when a crisis occurs is very beneficial to the community.
Is the data entry done by school employees, by this company, or do people go onto the web and enter the information?
Some of the information is going to be done by people themselves, Larry. Others are going to be created from data that's grabbed from public sources. And I think one thing, and correct me if I misheard this, but I believe they would actually be able to get much of the school data without your employees be stuck there at a computer terminal listing everybody's phone number and contact information.
Yeah, I can pick up on that. That's a very good question, and the chief has the right point on this, and that is that we have data available in our student database that has already been culled from parents that each year is updated, as we've all gone through that each year, and then we would then invite them to give us any other contact information that and as long as we loaded that, which we normally do anyway, into our database, that we can then download that into their system. So I think, again, I think from our end, it's not quite as complicated as I think from the citizens' end in using, who wants what and all that. We tend to send out information pretty regularly, certainly at the beginning of the year, which is why we're trying to roll it out as quickly as we can. So
Now, is there a charge per message?
no, in this case, it's not a charge per message. It's a charge per number. For us, it's a charge per student in the system. We can offer as many messages as we want. One of the other vendors, a couple of the other vendors had that charge per message, so it's much more difficult to get a handle on what the costs might be. The other piece of this that I think is important is that it's a yearly contract. So we have an opportunity to be out of this if we find that this just isn't working for us as well as we thought that it should. But we've also called I've contacted a number of communities that I know have been using it over the last year or two, and they've been very, 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 very happy with this particular product. So not only through the demonstrations, but also through some contact with other people.
Now, the last question I had for the chief is that, again, in a spirit of one community, and because the municipal side has not had a chance, for budgeting purposes, to budget for this, the proposal is for the schools to take and pay for the system, both for the school as well as for the community. Before I would want to pay for the community side, so we have one for the entire town, which I think we should have, I'd want a commitment from the Board of Selectmen that they want the system and that it is their intention to support the ongoing funding cost in year 2 and beyond. Because if they weren't going to support the funding in year 2 and beyond, then I don't think it would make sense to bring it in for year 1 and pay for that and then have that piece go away. Now, I believe that the school committee will make a decision based on the crisis that we've had, that we need to have this reverse 9-1 is what people refer to it on a regular basis. And for us, we can work it through revolving accounts or other kinds of things. I am very pleased with working with the town side, very pleased with helping out with the funding in year 1. The municipal side has been wonderful for us over the last number of years on both budget and capital. I'm happy to do that, but I would want to have, as one member, I would want to have as a stipulation that we get a letter from the Board of Selectmen stating their support on the municipal side and their support for ongoing funding on the municipal side.
Just to address that, as part of the team that has looked at the variety, I've met with both Mr. Gala, town manager, as well as our finance director. I had them sit in on several of the presentations made by various vendors, as well as Chief McNamara from the fire service, because we all realize that it is a need that our community has. And at our most recent emergency management meeting that we had with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, I outlined this program that we were working in cooperation with the school system to provide sort of the missing link from our own emergency communications to the public. And I know that Mr. Thrasher was thrilled to see that, number one, we were working cooperatively on an important issue for the community, but that we were meeting some issues that he had questions about as the chairman of the selectmen becomes head of the executive committee for emergency management in the community. And I was under the impression he was going to be bringing that back, but I know in talking with both the finance director and the town manager, they see the value to having this program in general and our capability, but more importantly, that we've shown that we've done this research in a very cost-effective manner.
I absolutely agree. I would like to have a formal vote on the Board of Selectmen. I only have one vote, so my committee may not agree, but
Nope, I
I'd like to
agree.
have a full
All
board,
of us will.
Board of Selectmen agree.
Well, Larry, when you say ongoing funding, are you referring to
The
shared funding, or just that?
There's an annual cost both
Right.
to the school side and the town side after year one. We're only going to, after year one, pay for the school
Okay.
side. The municipal side will have to pay for their
Okay,
piece.
you weren't clear about that. I wasn't clear from what you said.
No.
But that seems reasonable.
Right, the initial upfront cost we would cover out of our revolving account, and I don't feel bad about that because the municipal side has been a great partner over the last number of years. But when we start getting to the ongoing cost of operating the system, or the maintenance cost, whatever word you want to use, I'd want to make sure that the municipal side builds that into their budget, and they build it into the budget because they see it adds value to them, and they pay for their portion, and we pay for our portion.
Is it
So
roughly half, or would the community side be more expensive? Because I would imagine there are more people enrolled on the community side.
Actually, the community side is of a greater expense because there are more households per se that is the basis for their program. However, the cost per household is slightly less than the cost per student. I think they envision that the school system will probably utilize it in much more detail once it's up and running than perhaps the community side would.
So what's anticipated on the annual basis after year one for the school side versus the town side based on their current rates?
A particular number?
Yeah,
Paul does.
roughly.
Uh,
Okay,
Mr.
Paul.
Jackson?
Town side is $16,575, and the school side, first year is $12,173.61, and it would be a little bit over $10,000 on an ongoing basis. There's an initial setup fee for the school that of $1,500 that we wouldn't be, round numbers, that we wouldn't be paying after year one.
$10,000 a year approximately after that?
Yes.
And how much on the town side after year one?
The $16,575.
Okay.
Could we still continue it, just doing the school side after the first year if they didn't want to buy into it?
Yes.
Right. I
So we
just,
have-
Oh, we could do
Yes.
just the
We could
school
just do
side,
the school
Right.
side.
Yeah, we-
even if the
yeah.
town.
I just
chooses
wouldn't
go.
want to throw $16,000 away in year one and have to say, no, we're not going to provide the funding going forward. It
Well,
would be a
it's
waste.
almost like a grant. You know, you try to get people to buy into this so that they'll extend it afterwards.
Right.
It is a gamble on our part, but I think it's a
Well,
good gamble.
I do too. I think I think the key to this really is, I look at it in a larger way. We're enhancing the emergency planning of the entire
Yes.
community, and the schools are a part of that. And I think this gives us an opportunity to roll it out at the same time, so that not only do families with school children in the community, but all the citizens in Foxborough get a chance to see the same
works.
system and how it works. So I think I think that enhances
Like the buy-in is more
our ability to handle crises in a much more effective way. I think if we went on by ourselves and the town went on by themselves, I don't think we'd be.
Come together
I don't think people would understand the importance of how we all look at this together as as a critical piece. So I think this really does make a lot of sense in the first year, and I know that the chief and I have had discussions, and what he said to all of you is what he's said to me on a number of occasions about the work that he's been doing with the town on this.
Larry, it sounds like it'd be appropriate for you to maybe speak to the chairman of the selectmen, conveying maybe whatever consensus we take regarding.
Or you can have Mr. Jackson speak to them.
Yeah,
Whatever.
but it sounds like communication with the selectmen as quickly as we can regarding if we want this in implementation by October 1st.
Yeah, I would like to see the board have two motions, one to approve the school piece, and then one to approve the piece for the municipal side, subject to selectmen's authorization and commitment to ongoing funding. And that way there, if the selectmen say no, it doesn't stop the school from moving forward quickly on its reverse
Makes sense.
911 system.
Makes a lot of sense.
So we can do it with them, and we can do it without them.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, Martha, from you?
No, that'll do it.
That
Bevy?
sounds excellent.
Would you like a vote on that?
I would
Those
like,
two motions?
I'd like to hear the first motion for the approval to take from the building rental fund the $12,000 and change that Paul mentioned for the school side of Connect Ed.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bev, second by Kate, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Second motion would be to pay the $16,700 and change for the initial cost for the Connect City, subject to selectmen's endorsement of the program and commitment to ongoing funding after year one. Do I have someone who will make that motion?
Go to that
Motion
side.
been made by Martha, second by
We're
Katie.
trying to share.
We need that round table.
Any further discussion?
We need to get this round table going.
All those in favor?
Are you comfortable
Opposed?
with that?
Yes.
Motion approves 5-0. Number 3, Chris?
Great, thank you. Just a quick addendum to number 2. I had an opportunity this afternoon to meet with Mike Weber over at Foxborough Cable Access, and we were talking about emergency planning, and we were also talking about using the cable access channels to enhance this, not only the scrolling about updates, but also, as he mentioned, in the event that we did have an emergency, using Connect Ed and saying, a message that would say, well, I want to go into more detail about this, and if you would turn at 7 o'clock to cable access, I'll have more information, and so even this afternoon, as we were talking more about this, I think that we're continuing to enhance our ability to communicate and our opportunities to handle crises, which I'm very pleased about. So this really is a community effort. The third one is very brief because Chief O'Leary and I met this morning, and we were hoping that we would get the MetroLEC, the Metro Law Enforcement Council, to meet with us, and they were in, I think, one was in court.
Right, one of them had a court case of the officers that are tasked with this project for not just our community, but across the 40 member communities of our Regional Law Enforcement Council. This goes back to last October, and as a result of some earlier crisis incidents in school systems across the country, that the group that I belong to has developed a process for evaluating school security and for developing action plans for various incidents. They actually rolled out the model at a presentation. In fact, at that point, Dr. Norton attended with me that gave a demonstration of the intricate, detailed planning that would be done for each of our buildings that would participate in this. And in talking with Dr. Martis, we've identified both the high school and the Ahern School as initial critical locations that we want to have this process done with. And we will be having those people in to meet with both of us to give us a synopsis of what would be done to enhance and evaluate current systems, as well as moving forward and offering, let's say, a response plan that we would feel comfortable in implementing.
What about, at the last meeting, the Patriots had come forward and offered their security experts. What's just a little frustrating to me is we've been talking about this since May. I thought we had a commitment we'd get the security review done at least at the high school, if not the high school and the middle school, before school opens. It now looks as though we're not going to get the security review done before then. So two questions. One is, what's the status with the Patriots request? And two, how do we get this thing moving so this outside service is done, and what's the timeline for getting it done and getting a report to the school committee?
I don't have a specific timeline, Larry, and I'll explain. Some of this that was being discussed under prior administration, for whatever reason, didn't come to fruition. I've been meeting constantly with the new superintendent, with Mr. Jackson, to try and have a better understanding of what the school's needs are, and also to reach out to this particular group. The decision to utilize the Metrolec route in terms of coming in and doing evaluation has only been made since the end of July. And many communities last spring were already positioning themselves for implementation. So we're not at the head of the line, so to speak, because of the time frame that we've gone into this process. It is something that, you know, they would move so that we would get it done. The second process is a recommendation or, let's say, an offer from Stadium Security. They have developed some expertise in protecting physical assets because of their demands at Gillette Stadium. And in conversations with the superintendent, we've indicated that we might be using some of their expertise to do an analysis of some of the elementary schools. And we haven't formalized or finished that process, but it's one that can move forward.
Well, I absolutely understand the transition and people coming and people going and people trying to communicate. But I think the committee was quite clear in May and June that this was something we wanted done. We didn't care who we got from the outside as long as, A, they were qualified, and we didn't care what it cost as long as it was fair and reasonable. We wanted an assessment done of security within the schools so that we could evaluate what changes we need to make. Now, obviously, with Dr. Martis' arrival and his extensive experience in the schools, I recognize that, you know, we're going to kind of take a look at that and see what makes sense. But I certainly heard earlier, and I know Dr. Martis didn't because he wasn't here, a sense of urgency on the part of the school committee. We wanted to move this along. We wanted to try to get it done before school started. So if we don't have a date now, I, as one member of the committee, would urge that we get a date so that we can get this done and report back to the community. One of the things that I'm frustrated about, Chief, is that, you know, when this happened back in the May time frame, we talked about it then, and then we talked about it in June, and we talked about it in July, and now we're in August. So the lots of work done and lots of hard effort on a lot of people's part, but those that are putting children in the school in a couple of weeks don't always care about all the work they're going to do, and they want it done, and they want the report, and they want to know the schools are safe. And so I thank you for everything you've done. You and your folks have worked hard. I know the new superintendent has. But I would just like to drive a sense of urgency that the public wants to know that we've done everything we need to make our schools safe. I think the first two things you've talked about, we've talked about for a number of months. We've now taken action on them. We're demonstrating to the community we're moving forward. But I think this is a very critical piece of the whole pie as well. So unless anybody...
Larry, I share your concerns, and you know, I feel a sense of frustration too from what you're saying, but I think we can only do what we can do at this point in time, and again, just try to get a date as soon as we're able to.
I mean, to put it differently, if you came back to us next month and said that these particular folks who you'd really like to have can't get to it until December, then I'd be saying we ought to look for someone else who might be able to come in sooner. But if you said they're going to come in September 19th, you know, then that would be fine. I think the public needs to know who, when, where they're going to get a report, and then how soon we're going to make the changes, that's all.
I think there is some onus on our part to communicate what we've done. We've been, yes, it's been 3.5 months, but it has been very proactive, both on our part and the part of Chief, Dr. Norton, now Dr. Martis, Mr. Jackson. Let's celebrate here what we have, okay? Now, our schools were not unsafe to begin with. It was a communication issue. We are taking that very seriously. Chief and the current staff has done due diligence. I think there's some onus on us to communicate that. We have a new school year coming up, and that's, I think, first and foremost. Our buildings at all of the elementary were not unsafe. We have done other things based on school improvement plans, based on our principals. Our team have said, this is what we can do at Taylor, this is what we can do at Burrell, okay? And they've done those things. Mr. O'Leary has done a remarkable job, okay, of making sure that our schools are in fact safer and safer. We've reviewed the security system. We know that there's still loopholes. We know the students know them, how to find them. We keep closing those. To put it in perspective, personally, I am very happy that Metro law enforcement will come in. When we find out the date, it's December, then that's the date. If we want to have the Patriots come in and also give us feedback if they have that capability. But let's remember, we've done things in all of our buildings. So let's be real clear what's working, what's not, and move on from there. I don't think that it is what it is. And I want to know, whatever the Metro Law Enforcement Group can do that gives a higher level of security as we finish our district plan. But I don't think there's panic here. I really think, if you want the Patriots to come in and there's agreement that they have some expertise, they probably would be willing to come in on short order. But I don't think that that's necessarily the only thing that we can do. And remember, we have very good facilities people who will also be doing some security, additional security audit work.
I think the absence of a date, though, only raises the question in my mind, not to diminish any work that's been done by the chief or anyone else, but just, I think, for us to discuss and say, do we want to put something else in place? Do we want to have a discussion about looking outside of these resources that we've already identified, so that we do have, so we're not waiting until January or February.
Well,
so I
we don't
think
know.
it's a worthy discussion to have.
Yeah.
Here's my
It's been
point,
1 month.
folks. Here's
1
my
month
folks.
since we heard about the Metro law enforcement. I'd like to see in my mind, I'd like to know what that date is, because it sounds like in the next couple of days we'll have that. If Dr. Martis and Chief O'Leary feel that that's not sufficient, we have our own in-house talent, we have perhaps the Patriots, or they can come back and ask us for our approval to hire a security firm. I guess, that be done as soon as possible.
Let me clarify. First of all, I don't think I sounded like there's a panic. I didn't say the schools were unsafe, and I wasn't criticizing the chief. But if you go back to our cable access and you watch our prior 2 meetings, we discussed as a committee the importance of having the security review done before school started. Nobody on this committee said, doesn't matter whether it's when school starts or it's sometime later. At 2 meetings ago, Jan was here. She clearly knew that. At the last meeting, Dr. Mars was here. He was brand new. I am not criticizing anyone, but what I am saying is that we have shared publicly in this meeting a commitment on the part of the school committee to get the review done by school starting. Now, we're told tonight that's not going to happen. So what we need to do is for our next meeting, we need to have a concrete update so that the public understands why that changed and what the current status is. And as I said, if it's September 19th or October 1st or December 1st, the committee just has an obligation to understand what that is and then decide. No one here in the committee has dictated who we use for security or how we use for security, but this committee has said to the prior acting superintendent, the current superintendent, the chief, and to the business director that we would not allow money to be a factor in not getting the right security review. So I think just go back and watch the tapes. You'll see that what I'm saying tonight is not anything different than we've said in the last 3 meetings, May, June, and July. And in each of those meetings, there was a nodding of the heads that we would have it done by September. So we're not going to have it done by September. Let's plan on, at the next meeting, having a concrete answer for when it'll be done. That's all I'm asking for.
I don't think that's unreasonable, Mary. I think
Thank you.
Let me chime in on this. I do think that's fair. I think people were thinking that that we were going to approach this and try to get it done. I don't think anyone knew whether we could get it done or not during the summer. Right? So I think it's fair to make sure that we understand that until we met with the group, until we analyze with the right vendor. I mean, we could have someone else come in and do something that might not be of the quality that the chief and I have been discussing, and that we've been working with the Patriots. So I think it's kind of the level of, I want to make sure that this is done right. And I do agree with Kate that in working in a number of different school systems, this school system locks all its doors, has a security system, you buzz in to get into buildings. I mean, that's ahead of many school systems that I've analyzed. So I think the public needs to know that these schools are safe. We work closely with the police department, we work closely with the fire department, and adding a high-quality organization to really give a first-class look at what we're doing is really what we're trying to do. So I think it's important. It's important to do that. I don't think anyone committed because we wouldn't know until we met with them whether we would be able to do this during the summer. Ideally, it would have been terrific to do it during the summer, but that doesn't mean that the schools aren't in good shape and the access points. We always have work. Every school system has work to do in continuing to enhance this, to look at technology, which I think we've done tonight, to look at enhancing our communication system, which really was the area that I think first came out in the analysis of what happened with the bomb scare. So I think we were very prudent. I think we were really smart about this. I think a lot of people worked together on this issue, and I think we are moving ahead on it. So I think it's important to say that, and I think it's fair to say that.
Just, Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up, this is just a unique situation that has developed from this particular committee since last spring. As far back as 1999, we've been working cooperatively with the school administration in developing plans and processes for better securing our public buildings, such as schools, and making sure that they have developed ongoing process for handling various types of incidents. So it is an ongoing process. And anecdotally, last week we were having our officers going through every single building in this district, because sometimes a map or a diagram doesn't give that responder the same level of confidence as actually walking through a building, looking at doors, looking at cubby holes. And we were very fortunate. Mike O'Leary, your director of buildings, spent an inordinate amount of time with my staff, including myself, because it's been a long time since I've gone through the different buildings, just to make sure that I have a better understanding that if my people are going to be deployed in them in some fashion, that I'll have an understanding of what challenges they would face inside. But it's part of an ongoing process.
Excellent. Any other comments on security?
I have just one question.
Okay.
And that, it may be premature, but Dr. Martis, Chief O'Leary, the third component of what was most concerning to parents, and we still may not have the answer yet, but is there any, where do we stand on designating that one central meet spot? Where, has there been any thought as to where that might be, both if it's a school issue or if it's on the town side, a community issue? Have we given any thought to where that gathering place might be?
It's actually going to be variable according to which building and what type of situation they're facing.
Right, but do we have a scenario for where that gathering would then place be at any of the 5 schools? Because I would imagine that would also be part of our communication plan. And maybe premature, but that's the only other question I have on security, where we stand on that.
Actually, that's going to be determined by the different surveys that we're going to be doing, because you're going to have separate areas for students, that we could ensure that by moving them to that location, it would also be secure, as well as different points for parents, the process for returning the child to a parent if there's some type of ongoing issue, and dealing more effectively with the media so that they have better information. But it's part of a comprehensive approach, and to specifically say that we are going to meet X at the high school and Y at the borough, I don't think we want to.
So it will be we
Project
decided
that.
that it's situational based on the emergency.
Correct.
Excellent.
Yes.
Because then part of what we had said with the district emergency plan, we're not going to communicate every detail, but whatever we can communicate, we want to make sure that we also have that in place by fall. You've done a phenomenal job in 3.5 months. Chief, Mr. Jackson, Dr. Martis, it's amazing where we are. And if we can figure out a way, though, to communicate this both at a meeting and then to have it on the web, I think will be very important. I know I'm sure you'll be having an open letter that goes home to parents. So to talk about that to whatever extent, and obviously we're not going to give details of that district plan, but to assure parents that we have that, and that the issue of a meeting place will be dependent on what that emergency is, but that it is part of it, that we know where it will be for that district, based on the district plan. I think that communication is key.
And just to pick up on what the chief said, that is incident-specific, and one of the reasons that we really think the Connect Ed piece is crucial in this is that we can then communicate with parents about that. We had this incident even in this section of the building, so we've moved students to another site or even off-site.
Right.
And we can communicate with that, and then, as the chief mentioned, how then do we then make sure that the students then connect with their parents and move it?
So my last question would be, then, for the start of the school year, the work has been phenomenal, and if there's still the piece on security, whatever we feel that is the best, I just don't want to do it unless it is really worthwhile. To me, the key is, it's the communication piece. Because you've done that work. Now, how are we going to communicate that to parents? And what's appropriate for the safety plan? In June and July, we talked about a couple different scenarios. So now we know that the meeting place is going to be incident specific. So how do we take that and start to communicate? I guess I don't have a good, I'm confused as to how what the plan should be.
Well, now that we have a system that's been approved tonight, I can then send that information out to parents. We won't be able to send it, because I don't think it will be ready by the first day of school, but I can send a letter out to parents saying that the school committee tonight approved this system, go into some details about what that will be. They actually Connect Ed actually has a protocol for introducing this to the community. So and I can even weave in, when we have an incident, these are the kinds of things that you would be hearing from me, or hearing from a principal, and that we can certainly do it in that
And
way.
you say here that it looks like it'll be early October for full implementation, so we're only a month away.
Yeah, right. So I think we're in good shape with that.
Thank you.
Okay, appointment of school nurse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Just a quick, this one, as you know, the appointment of school nurses remains the responsibility of the school committee. Ms. Karen Larissy was hired as a long-term substitute nurse at the Igo Elementary School in February 2006. Since that time, she has obtained Department of Education certification and has done a very good job at the Igo School. I recommend that the Foxborough School Committee vote to appoint Ms. Karen Larissy to the position of school nurse at the Igo Elementary School.
Is there a motion? Made by Martha, second by Deb. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item is the appointment of Dr. Martis as voting board member for BICO and Spoke Collaboratives. Is there a motion to appoint Dr. Martis? Motion by Katie, second by Kate. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Almost back on schedule. Being almost 8:50, update on the start of the school year, Dr. Martis?
And I think I'll end up getting it back on schedule with this. Just to give everyone an overview, and I know we have other agenda items that will speak more specifically, so I'm not going to speak specifically to some of the areas that we'll be hearing about in later items, but we'll be starting, as I think, as I mentioned last meeting, I continue to meet with a number of people to get to know the community again. As Ms. Spinelli said, she's been gone a little over 4 years. I've been gone 24 years, so it's been a little bit of a steeper learning curve here. But I've met with groups, Park and Recreation, the recreation program. I was visited in Vensis. It was a terrific, as I mentioned earlier, we orchestrated the search that culminated tonight in the assistant superintendent. I've had a number of parents. Representative Barrows came in. Jack Othelette has visited. I made a point of visiting someone who I've known since I was a kid, but who I know has the pulse of the community. I was in Dave Gaffey's barbershop the other day. I don't want to say I didn't get a haircut with him, but he certainly has the pulse of the community. So we've been doing a lot. I've been at the town hall with the treasurer and town clerk Marie Clemens the other day. So I've been doing a lot with that, which I think has been terrific. Tomorrow we have an administrators retreat at Gillette Stadium for the day. They have graciously, and I mean very graciously, offered their services to us in hosting us at the stadium. We have all of our administrators, principals, directors, department heads that will be joining us tomorrow. We're going to start actually with the Did You Know video, so we can start the discussion about what the school system can and should look like. We want to talk about goal setting and how we talk about moving together as an entire school system and community, really in getting us ready as a leadership group for our retreat with the school committee in September, which we'll be scheduling. So I think that will be, and again, I want to thank the New England Patriots for they've been wonderful to work with and have been really terrific. On Wednesday, we start with our new teacher orientation. We have 20 teachers that will be joining us, and I know Larry will be an integral part of that, welcoming teachers into the district. We have a 2-day program. The first day, or the first morning, is generally district-wide. We thought Jack Othelette was going to do our tour of the town. It's Bob Hicks from the Historical Society that's going to do that for us. And then we bring our new teachers and our administrators again to Gillette Stadium. They hosted a luncheon for us last year and are very, very willing to do that again. So we have 2 very full days with our new staff to bring them in to the school system. And then a week from Wednesday, we have our entire staff here at Foxborough High School, and we'll be welcoming them and getting our school year started. So we have done a lot of preparation, and again, I don't want to, I know we have other areas to talk in more detail about, and I don't want to do that in this portion because I think we're ready. I had an opportunity to visit all of our schools today, to walk around the buildings with the principals, and we are ready, as you can see right here in this space, and how clean it is, and how much work people have accomplished over the summer. We have a lot. I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I think we'll be ready to get started. So I'm very pleased and very encouraged to see all the people working together in this.
Excellent. Mr. Bortolotti, do you want to come forward? Give us an update on Power School?
Okay.
Good evening. What I've placed in front of you is a quick outline, a high-level outline in terms of what we've been up to during the summer with respect to the Power School implementation. Pretty much broken down by the months of June, July, August, and hopefully September. As you can see, as we go through the items really quickly, the month of June went fairly smoothly. Of course, the least amount of work that we had to do in the beginning to get the project under roll, everything was pretty much on track. Into July, we began to run into a little bit of delay. The first 3 items listed under the July tasks were vendor tasks, and there were some issues, partly with some of the organization that occurred and some technical difficulties with our firewall that were resolved and put us about a week or so behind. We had our training scheduled, which initially we thought might happen at the beginning of August, but is now scheduled more appropriately for this week, actually. And we had begun again in July. We had begun our business review, which is a very, very detailed look at processes and procedures with respect to what's going on in the district as far as student information, and that pretty much went on through to the last week, and then we began some configurations. Into August, presently we're working extremely hard to extract our data. We ran into a little bit of difficulty with our present vendor. The vendor was unwilling to provide some direction, support with respect to finding the data within our current system, which was a bit disappointing. Nevertheless, we've proceeded to push ahead, and it's just slowed down the process. However, the first imports into the system have gone very smoothly. As promised, getting the data in is the easy piece. It's getting it out of our existing system that's been a bit cumbersome. What we've got coming up this week, quite a bit of activity. Beginning Wednesday, we begin our initial training sessions. The training sessions are pretty much going to happen in 2 phases due to availability of staff. We have over 50 staff that have been scheduled for training. I think that's quite a compliment to the schools, the principals, the organization, and the willingness of the individuals to provide their time in a lot of cases. And that training, again, will begin Wednesday. Will occur Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then again, for those who are not available on those days, we will come back with people that will be trained during parts of those trainings, and we'll conduct our own training on Monday and Tuesday. And then the final piece of the teachers. Basically, the teachers, we have some select staff that will be getting the teacher piece for the Ahern and the high school. They will be being exposed to the product in terms of attendance and gradebook on Wednesday afternoon, August 22nd, as will a couple of individuals that will assist as trainers, because then on August 30th, during in-school professional development and in-service training, we will then train the entire staffs of the Ahern in the morning and the high school in the morning and the Ahern in the afternoon for the power teacher piece. So hopefully all that will go well, and still on schedule to go live September 4th.
You still on budget, Paul?
Excuse
Are we
me?
on budget?
Yes.
And for the September 4th date, 90% confidence, 100%, 80%?
I'd say 90-95 present.
Excellent. Excellent.
As far as being on track.
Excellent. Excellent job. Questions from the committee?
Just for clarification, Paul, was our old vendor that no longer supports the software, and we obviously didn't choose that vendor with Power School. It's the old vendor that didn't want to help us to locate the data?
Correct. The communication that I received from them was that they would not assist a customer in leaving their product. And the assistance that I was asking for was determined to be that type of assistance. And we had some communication, some discussions where I was looking for assistance in terms of locating data within the product that I had been asking for that type of assistance all along, and I consider that part of the product support that we had purchased for the current school year. We had made the decision to purchase that maintenance and support as a protection should things not quite work out with Power School to begin the school year, and for assistance in locating the data we needed to export. So I was disappointed. I thought it was a question of a technicality.
But do you have everything you need now, or is there anything else that you need in order to finish extracting all the data?
Time. We just need to make use of the time.
Well, we could give you 5 volunteers, but I don't think you'd want them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Can I just make one quick statement? Paul's a little bit modest. He's been putting in a lot of extra hours in this project, and an example was he was in on Saturday and Sunday this weekend working on the projects.
Well, since he's here before he leaves, I think it's fair, we've said this before, but we should probably say it again. If you look at the condition of our IT, our infrastructure, whatever language you want to use, 2 years ago, before you came, and where we are today, you're another one of those individuals who has made a significant difference to this community. The hours you've put in are one thing, but the results you've achieved are something else. And you and your team have done an absolute phenomenal job in getting us where we need to be and out of where we never wanted to be, but we were. So you're commended for doing a tremendous job, and I know your staff that works with you should be commended as well, as often as you're here.
Thank you. The compliments are well received, and definitely my staff deserves a bulk of the credit. So I'll make sure to pass it along.
Just to pick up on that, because I think it's an important point, and Paul continues to build and refine that staff.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe I have 2 people coming in this week on the desktop support, and so that's a real key to this, and it's really has rolled out well.
Well, I think the example would be in this year's, the budget request for the school year that's coming up was robust on your part, and this committee supported your robust request because of the outstanding work you and your group have done and the need that we have going forward. So it's another example where when you're successful, you end up getting the additional resources you need to be even more successful. And what you've accomplished to date, while it may be a lot, I've heard you talk about where you know we need to be over the next few years, and there's a long way to go as well. So these successes go a long way to convincing the advisory committee, the town, and everyone else that we're spending our money wisely in the information technology area. And it's partially because of your leadership and partially because of your great staff.
Thank you. I'll pass it along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an update on the request that Kate had made a number of months ago to study the use of defibrillators and whether or not we had enough and whether or not we should do something different. So let me turn this to Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, after that initial school committee meeting where this was discussed, there have been a number of meetings amongst high school administration, the athletic director, Michael Leary, school nurse, and I guess I would have to say that I think we were, and I had attended some of these meetings, we were having a very difficult time coming up with a direction or a final decision as to the course of action. And it wasn't until we had further discussions with the police chief, Dr. Martis engaged in a meeting, and then Deputy Chief Bagley of the fire department and Dennis Greenberg, who is the, I believe, EMS coordinator for the fire department. And they were able to really bring everything together, give us the direction that we needed, made a recommendation that I think everybody really that had been wrestling with the direction that we should go felt really good about the end result and the attention, not the attention, but the direction that we were going to go in. And as I reread the email that I had sent to the committee, I realized that I really didn't give you any information as to what really had happened prior to the financial piece that we're ultimately recommending. And I really need to give Deputy Chief Bagley and Dennis Greenberg a lot of credit, and it really helped us come to a final decision. Part of that decision was that the athletic director, who is new, has gone out and evaluated worst-case scenario in terms of, and I guess I'll pick on football, that the football team not always practices together, and when I say together, that you can't always expect the varsity, the JV, and the freshman team to be all in the same proximity. In fact, they could be in 3 different fields in different parts of town. And based on that model, if you will, the count was that, and this fall sports are the worst, we'd need 16 AEDs, automatic external defibrillators, in order to maintain the appropriate coverage. So that the proposal tonight is to purchase 16 automatic external defibrillators to allow each one of the coaches to carry one and have it on the field, not only during practices, but the expectation is that they would take it to away games to provide the protection that the device would have. Currently, and I only have numbers on our fall coaching staff, 6 of our coaches are CPR certified, and 5 have been trained in the use of AEDs. We have Sharon Kelly, our head nurse at the high school, is a certified trainer. I believe 2 of our other nurses are trainers. Dennis Greenberg is offered to provide training at no cost and any time that we needed it. So that Craig Nigerian, the athletic director, will be conducting and coordinating training on CPR and AED use for all of our coaching staff. The cost, initial setup cost to purchase the 16 units would be $19,808 approximately, and actually the prices have come in a hair less than that for the 16 units, and with a service program of $88 per year per device, and the company providing the service would come out twice a year to check the devices and make sure that they are being maintained properly and are in fact working. Along with the direction as to how we should utilize the AEDs and how many we should purchase, there was also discussions relative to the fact that the coaches really needed to be able to contact our athletic trainer and also have the ability to call 911 in the event there is an emergency. Based on that, Craig Nigerian is also currently polling all of the coaches for the fall, and will ultimately produce a list for us of the recommended number of Nextel cell phone devices that he would ask that we purchase to make sure that every coach either has their own personal cell phone or a cell phone provided by the school department to utilize for that season. Now, if we provide that cell phone at the end of the season, the cell phone would be turned back into the athletic director, who would then reissue that phone to the next coach that would need it the next season, so that our coaches always would be able to communicate with either emergency services as needed or the trainer. The cost right now for the cell phones, 99 cents each, based on state bid, with an estimated monthly cost of $20 per month. We have a pooled minute arrangement, and we are able to monitor each cell phone, so I don't anticipate that there'll be an issue in terms of abuse on the cell phones.
Paul, since most people today seem to have cell phones, I would think most of the coaches would have them. Rather than spend $3,856 on cell phone charges when there may not be more than a few calls in a year, only in the event of an emergency or something, is there a way to, for instance, a coach has his own cell phone, pay him a stipend of some amount of money that would cover the cost of any phone calls that he or she would make, and do it in such a way that it encourages someone who might not have one to get his own, and at the same time save the taxpayers some portion of the $3,856.
May I suggest, is it possible to make it a condition of employment? If we're paying already a stipend, that part of the condition is that they have a cell phone, and in the event that they don't, then, we have part of our athletic staff, we currently do have cell phones.
Yeah, we've actually, Paul and I met with Craig Nigerian this afternoon, and he's contacting all the coaches to find that out, and it seems like most of them are saying, I have my own cell phone. No one wants 2 cell phones.
Correct.
And I'll just as soon do that. And really what we're saying is, and I think this is a key to this, because, as Paul mentioned, I think we were both reluctant when we walked in the room with Deputy Chief Bagley and Mr. Greenberg to get our coaches involved in this. I think it's and as we polled around the league, this isn't an area that because I was looking at it as multiple-day training in CPR, which it had been at one point in time, and the whole issue of AEDs and how we use them and when we use them and who should use them and what's the condition and all of that. I think it's difficult to ask coaches to do that, but I learned more, and that the training to certify in CPR and AED is about 4 hours, and we would offer that on a couple of occasions in the next few weeks, so that all of our coaches would be trained. And but the important thing in the training that we need to continue to reiterate is that the first thing you do is call 911. That's the first thing you do. And we're not medical doctors. We haven't had that extensive amount of training. So when we see an incident, we call 911, and then we administer CPR, and then we administer the AED if needed. The other thing that I found out that, again, I didn't know, is learning more about this, is that you can't use the AED on someone who doesn't need it.
Right.
So that's an important, there's a safeguard there, so that's important, because I wouldn't want a coach in trying to save someone and not knowing as much to do something that wouldn't be the right thing to do and maybe cause more harm than good. So knowing all of that, and I mentioned it at the meeting, it certainly changed my mind, and I think we can take the lead in this as we're doing in other things. We can take the lead in this and have our coaches all trained in CPR using AEDs, and just make it a requirement of what we believe is important for people to be doing the work that we want them to do here. So the cell phone thing, I think, is still a work in progress, Kate, but I believe that most people, so I don't think we're going to need 16. I don't think we'll need a handful, probably, because I think most people would just say, listen, I'll just put in 911 in my speed dial, and that's how I would handle it, and say, I know it's number 1 or number 3 or whatever it is on my phone, and when I have an incident, I'm hitting that, and we have the direct number to the fire station, to the emergency medical folks. So I think we've put a lot of this together. So I don't think, Larry, to your point, that it'll be anywhere near that. Whether we need to do something about that in some way, I think we can deal with that as we move along and see what the real needs are. I mean, the number of times that coaches would be calling 911 in the seasons, and in fact, Deputy Chief Bagley and Mr. Greenberg said the same thing. I mean, it's minimal.
Right.
And we hope it's even less than that, but it is minimal. So I think most of our coaches would say, fine, I can do that.
Paul, what account would you take the funding from? The athletic revolving account?
No, I take it at this point out of building rental.
Out of
also,
building rental.
the athletic revolving account took the major hit on the bleachers.
Okay.
So
Lots of questions?
Just a couple of points. I don't know if the athletes themselves still do this, but do they still have the captain's practices before?
Yes.
All right. I think somebody needs to sit down with them and make sure, whoever the captains are, that they have a cell phone with them. Because if they're out there literally hanging by themselves because they're holding a practice session because they're allowed to, we have to make sure that one of the captains or whatever, has some sort of a cell phone so that they can call for help.
Yeah, and then understanding of the protocol.
That Martha, that's an outstanding idea, because every
you don't wanna
sport,
leave anybody out
we
there
have
hanging.
captain's practices because of MIA regulations. So
No,
they're
and I
out
don't want
there
them- I don't
2
want
weeks
them to be-
before, and the kids don't always have a cell phone on them, or they don't
So
know
we have to make
what
sure
the
that
3
if they're
steps
going to
are.
do this,
Yeah,
that it's
the
important.
3 steps, too.
Yeah,
the important
3
piece of
steps,
that.
911,
Right.
CPR.
They're out there
and
now.
with-
Yeah. Well, then it's-
So you're not going to give the
somebody needs to-
captains the
No.
No,
No, but I think
make
it's
sure
part of the
that they have a
training.
cell phone
No,
with
they're not
them,
gonna be
that
part
they can,
Just the use of the cell phone, and understanding what that direct number is.
Right.
and what to do about it. Now, the other thing, if we're going to make sure that all our coaches are CPR certified and AED trained, I think one thing that we have to do for these people is make sure that it's an ongoing thing, that they're
Yes.
recertified, and that there's some level of comfort. Don't just certify and leave them out there hanging.
Yeah.
Make sure that there's some sort of ongoing training, because
Correct.
everybody has a level of comfort, and not everybody's level is the same. So I don't want them to just assume because they got certified. I've been out there when there's been an emergency, and I've had people come to me afterwards and say, I took the course and I'm certified, but I froze. So I think as their level of comfort, if you keep reviewing it with them, then they will become more comfortable with reacting in a situation. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
Because even as a professional, sometimes it's like, oh my God,
That's
there's
a great
nobody
idea,
here.
Martha.
At first, when I was in a hospital setting, you call the code 9, and when you're out there by yourself hanging, it's a whole different experience. So I think we have to make sure that they have an ongoing level of comfort.
Anything else, Martha? Katie? Debbie?
So should we vote the number that is minus the 3,800 for the cell phones? since
I would
that's
like
the
a
big-
motion of the
Include it so that
19,
if
of the 19,808 for the 16 AED units only at this point.
And then they'll come back to
And we
us
can
on the
work
cell
on it.
Because
phone.
we have a cell phone budget and everything else, so that's not an issue. But we need the capital for the 19,808 for the 16 units. So do I have a
I would
motion
be happy to make that motion.
to come from building rental, second by Bevy? Any further discussion?
Just if we could have an update maybe at our next meeting, just to give us a balance of what's left in the building rental revolving account.
Actually,
This evening we've spent,
Paul can tell you right now, I think.
We've spent a lot.
$246,000 would be the remaining balance.
All right?
okay, I'm not worried.
And these have been really important purchases.
Oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that's-
I'm not discounting that, absolutely.
Let's take the vote. All those in
Okay.
favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I think just to follow up on Katie's comment, because in the last year or so, we've used the revolving accounts fairly substantially. And we've done that on one-time kind of items, whether it be the bleachers or whether it be this. And what we've been trying to do is to use capital-type funds through the revolving accounts rather than having to go to the town all the time. And we're trying to demonstrate to the town our fiscal responsibility, but also fiscal responsibility means using the revolving accounts and not, give you an example, Chris, a year and a half, 2 years ago, the request was made to replace the lights out the football field for $50,000. Now, some people question, would you spend that kind of money for 6 or 8 or 10 nights a year when you're going to have the lights? But nevertheless, the town voted for the $50,000. At the time the town voted for that, nobody told them how much was sitting in a revolving account at the school for athletics, which was over $100,000. And so what we've tried to do as a school committee, in a spirit of being transparent, we've reviewed the revolving accounts probably on a quarterly basis. We've shared them with the public, what every account has, what the balance is, as we've used money. Again, trying to show the community that we're not asking for funds at the annual basis when we have money tucked away that we could be using, and as a result, the municipal side gets shortchanged. So we've done a good job of balancing that, and I think Katie brings that up tonight. The next item is an update from Mr. O'Leary on all of the work that he's been doing all summer long on the capital projects that people are commenting on because we're making such great progress.
As you know, the summer, I have about 9 weeks to take care of all the buildings. We like to do most of the work in-house whenever possible. We bring in contractors when we have to on any of the larger projects. When we plan the summers, we usually like to do something at every school. So just to give you a quick example, like at the Borough, we put up the sound-absorbing panels in the cafeteria to reduce the echo and the noise in there. We put the Scotch tin film over the cafeteria windows, and boy, you can notice at least a 10 or 15 degree difference in that cafeteria, temperature-wise and the glare, which worked out very well. We regraded and reseeded again where we removed the old tennis court. We were collecting large pools of water, and they couldn't use it, so we brought in more loam, regraded it again, and seeded it. And we managed to get 5 of the worst classrooms painted with our people in-house down at the Borough. At the Taylor School, we did remove the damaged pavement to the right of the school, brought in loom, seeded it, and so on. Now they've got a field that they can play kickball and so on right outside the gym for phys ed. We've had the highway department down on the weekends, grading now for the playground, for the new playground area. We were hoping to have the piece of equipment in there installed for the first day of school. Right now, we probably won't have the piece of equipment installed there till the first or second week in September. The reason being, the PTO had selected a vendor, had the equipment that they wanted to purchase, all set sometime in May. Well, the school committee voted to augment their funds. Let's do it in one fell swoop. Now we're using public funds. So we had to put out an RFP again, get at least 3 bids. The bids didn't come in till late June. By the time they analyzed the 3 of them, picked a vendor, and ordered the equipment, it was 5 weeks lead time. So the piece of equipment probably won't arrive till the first week in September. We will be ready. As you'll see, the highway department's been down digging it out for us. They're setting the timbers now that will hold the mulch once the equipment is installed. And also at the tailor, we replaced 36 window shades, which were in pretty tough shape. The IGO this year, there was quite a bit of work done. We removed all the old rug and abated the asbestos tile in 15 classrooms, 2 storage rooms, and 7 office areas, and replaced it all with VCT tile. The only thing left now at the IGO is the library, which has VCT tile under the rug. We didn't do that this year for 2 reasons. One, I would have no place to put all the books and so on because I filled the gymnasium with all the furniture from all the classrooms. Secondly, the rug, although it's showing its wear, still has a couple of years left of useful life. So we'll plan in the next couple of years to empty out the library, remove the rug, abate the tile, and re-rug that area. I was very pleased at how quick the abatement people were in and out of there. All of the tile was down in a matter of weeks, and some of those floors were in pretty tough shape. We had to top dress them a couple of times before we replaced the tile. And my people were amazing. As they finished a classroom, the tile was no sooner down than the people who were in there cleaning the rooms, washing the windows, and had 2, 3, 4 coats of wax on before they get the next room finished. So we're well ahead of schedule there. The main office, we reconfigured the main office. There used to be a wall. Main office, for the most part, was not very receptive to the public. We had a secretary on this side. We had a wall. We had a secretary on this side. When this one wasn't in, she'd have to get up, walk around to this desk, and so on and so forth. We immediately took the wall down. It's one large room. We had a counter made similar to the one at the Taylor School installed. Nice oak trim, etc. Today the electrician was in doing the wiring for the circuits. We'll pull the computer cables and the phones down later this week, and the main office will be done. Also, we cut in a view window in the hall, in the wall that looks out into the hall, so the secretary sitting there can view anyone who happens to go through the double doors without going through the office. Normally those doors are locked, so you have to enter the office before you get into the school area. Should those doors have been left open or ajar and someone walks by, secretaries have a clear view. Also, they can see any children, put it hopefully low enough where they can view any children who happen to walk either in or out. So that's done. We get 6 classrooms painted there, finished dozens of doors. We refinished the IGO gym floor, and the security fence for the playground, I was assured, will be in before the first day of school down at the playground. The Ahern School, the Ahern doesn't need as much work, obviously being the newer of the schools, although we did install a new sound system at the football field. I understand it sounds wonderful. And we're also painting the corridors at the Ahern School. Even though it's only 6, 7 years old, the corridors take a beating and are showing wear and tear. So we're in painting all the corridors on an ongoing basis. We get quite a few done this summer, and we'll do them in the evenings right through the year until we get them all painted. High school, we relocated 2 computer rooms here. We need additional classroom space, so we had a couple of rooms that we relocated computers and turned them back into classrooms. We replaced the curbing, obviously, at the main entrance, new sidewalks, 6 handicap ramps, the finish coat for the pavement, finally. We've had a binder down for almost 3 years now. The finish coat is going on Wednesday. So the paving will be completed and the curbing done. Our hope is within the next year or two, there'll either be money or CIP, et cetera, to finish the curbing in the front of the building. That would have to be new curbing because it's contoured and it is in the front of the building. So it'd be a little more expensive price per foot, but than the curbing we used here, which came from the center of town. So it was existing curbing that the town already owned.
Mike, would you make sure that when we do the capital plan for this year, that you have the cost already calculated for
Yes.
that? I would like to see us finish that project. Once we've got done everything you've done, to then drive up to the circle and see it look like it's completely, we just got to
I'm
get
going to have
that finished.
Capone, who has a state contract, told me he'd come in as soon as his job is done, reconfigure, and he'll have a budget figure for me.
Excellent, thank you.
Which is great. Bleachers, the bleachers have been totally rehabbed in the gym. Every board was taken off, sent back to New York. They were milled down, refinished, brought back, installed. Handicap cutouts were put in, safety rails on the sides, stairs, and the other thing I'm waiting for, which will be next week, because I can't come in this week because I'm refinishing the floor, I just arrested the P-rails or the handrails going up the stairs. So the bleachers will be done. Again, the gym floor was stripped today, and we'll be putting the finish coat on it this week. Corridor walls, obviously we're doing complete touch-up in all the corridors. We go in, fix ceilings and so on. Shades, we're going to replace 134 window shades here at the high school. If you go into a lot of the classrooms, they're the original shades. I don't know if they were bought white and turned brown, or they were bought from a brown base. I don't know. But we're going to replace them all with white light blocking shades. And the reason we're doing a lot of them is because now that all the rooms are using the cameras and so on and video, so they need light blocking shades in all the windows. So we're going to replace 134 of those and 9 vertical blinds. We're getting rid of the old curtains that are in the guidance office and replace them with vertical blinds. We've probably used, as you can see by the looks of the floors, I think we're going to end up using about 750 gallons of wax in all of our schools, believe it or not. I have to absolutely commend the custodians. We're well ahead of schedule. If you walk through our buildings, every classroom, every room is done. We're down to the corridors now. We have 2 cafeterias to do, one at the Ahern and here, and the reason they're not done is because of summer school at the Ahern, and because here the rec department uses our cafeteria if it rains, so they bring the kids over and use our caf. So the guys will be finishing the caf today, and you'll see the floors are stripped, ready to get wax put on them. So we're going to be well ahead of schedule. So, questions?
Looked awesome when we drove up today.
Yeah. Big
What a
difference.
difference.
And when that final coat comes in, it's going to really dress up this high school.
Yes, it will. I mean, I'll have to commend, Charlie Capone. His crew was amazing. I mean, neat, fast. The grading, the loom, the seed, even the riprap they put. If you notice the washout from the church parking lot, we had just regular stone there. The heavy rain we had last week just washed it out. He said, I'll just throw in riprap, no additional cost.
That's great.
Neatened it up.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, his crew was amazing. He was excellent. Of course, Charlie, being a resident of Foxborough, I think he gave it his best.
Takes a lot of pride in his community and his work.
Every
Yes.
time you went by, nobody was standing there, everybody was
They
working.
were all working.
They were excellent.
Paul, did you want to add anything as well, since your name's next to Mike's?
No, I'm very happy with the way Mr. O'Leary presented. I think
Okay.
he's done a wonderful job this summer.
All right.
As he does every summer. And I have to just say, your team, you are absolutely correct, and we need to say a special thank you. The custodians have been just unbelievable. The floor, every year it's clean. They actually stopped me last week when we were in for a community meeting and said, look at the floors. I mean, these are even shinier than, and I know that they said there's a new solvent that you're using and new wax, but the pride that they take and the hard work and really what you've done, Mike, and in managing your team, it's similar to technology. So, our very deep thanks. You always pull it out of the fire and get it done.
One of the things that I'd like the committee to think about is, we've talked tonight about Mr. Bortolotti's department, we've talked about Mike's department, we've talked about other people's departments. Maybe what we could consider doing periodically is having part of an agenda devoted where we ask the custodians all to come and we congratulate them. We talk a little bit publicly so people at home can hear about what do they do and what is their job and what are their accomplishments. And the same thing with Mr. Bortolotti's folks. These folks don't often get a lot of praise publicly. They don't often get a lot of acknowledgement. And if we're going to create an environment where people really feel appreciated, maybe we can help make that happen at the school committee by periodically bringing some of these groups in, acknowledging them publicly and recognizing them publicly, and letting the public understand what it really is to be a custodian, what it really is to be a bus driver, what it really is to be all the organizations within our community. And that over a period of a year or so, maybe people can start to see, a good example would be the nurses. I'm not sure that everybody can really appreciate what the nurses do. So having an evening where we spend a half an hour with the nurses and talk about what their job is and show our appreciation might be a way to educate the taxpayer, the kinds of people that we have working here and what they do, so that when we're doing contract negotiations or budget reviews or anything else, they're better informed as to what these people do and why these people earn what they do, and at the same time, we're celebrating their success.
Larry, I think that's a great idea. We just have to as chair, you just have to make sure that they're first on the agenda. Because I wouldn't want them to wait until 9:35 at night.
No doubt about that.
It's nice.
Bob Bertotti and Michael Leary, thank you for hanging in there for so long.
I'm going to steal on the cookies.
Go ahead.
You have to take 3 now.
Martha, did you want to add anything?
No, I just think it would be nice to be able to put faces and names together for everybody.
Katie, anything else on this topic? Debbie?
Also.
Okay, all right. Now, the next item, a little bit complicated, but it's approval of bid for the musical instruments. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier this summer, the school committee authorized the expenditure of $75,000 for a variety of musical instruments. We have gone out to bid. There were a total of 5 vendors that bid. None of the vendors bid on all of the items. As a result, I need to, from a housekeeping standpoint and legally, I need to go through some of these items and ask that we vote to, or the school committee vote to reject some of the items. Mr. Massey has reviewed the bids, he's reviewed the items, and it's based on his recommendation that I have formulated these recommendations. So that, does anybody have any questions before I go right into the motions?
You're going to follow, you were going to walk us through the memo
Yes.
of August 16th?
Yes.
All right, and is that up on the board so the public can see it too? Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
So I'd recommend the school committee vote to reject the bid submitted by Propoli Bergalt for the items listed as Propoli PB 1121 as not being in the best interest of the Foxborough Public Schools.
Do I have such a motion?
I'll make it.
Made by Martha, second by Bevy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I recommend the school committee vote to reject the bid submitted by Suzuki Musical Instruments for the items listed as Suzuki BX-200, Suzuki AX-200, Suzuki SX-200 as not being in the best interest of the Foxborough Public Schools.
Do I have such a motion? By Katie, seconded by Martha. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I recommend the school committee reject the bid submitted by Music and Arts Center for the item listed as JR1, which is a 3/4 acoustic guitar, as not being in the best interest of the Foxborough Public Schools.
Do I have such a motion? Made by Kate, seconded by Bevy. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I recommend the school committee reject the bid submitted by K&S Music for the items listed as RS Berkeley SBC S60, RS Berkeley SCT S 40, R.S. Berkeley SCBC 48, Irwin Auto B501S, Irwin Auto C600S. Colorado Acoustic Guitar is not being in the best interest of the Foxborough Public Schools.
Do I have such a motion made by Martha, second by Katie? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now to the good part. I recommend the school committee vote to award the following items in the total amount of $55,683 to Music and Art Center. Quantity of 4 11D Con double French horns with case.
Paul, do you need to read that whole thing, or can you make reference to the memo?
I'd be more than happy to make reference to the items listed, quantity, items, and prices listed for a total amount of an award of $55,683.
Motion by Bevy, second by Katie.
Round
Second by Katie. Discussion?
I can't.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I would recommend the school committee vote to award the items as listed, total amount of $11,864 to Rayburn Musical Instruments.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that.
Made by Kate, second by Bevy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Bev?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
This would leave a balance of $7,453. I have had some discussion with Mr. Massey. He was going to go back and talk to the other music teachers in the department, and in the event there was a recommendation for some additional instruments, they would come back and we would discuss it.
Okay?
And you would bring that, of course,
Yes.
to us.
Back to us for approval. Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Massey's, I presume, quite pleased with this purchase?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. We saw them out practicing the
There'll be
first
more-
day of band practice.
They'll be more excited when they arrive.
How long will it take to get them in, Paul?
Some could be 45 to 60 days.
Okay, so we won't have them for the start of school.
Probably not.
Okay. All right, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. Other matters, I'm going to start with the superintendent.
I'm set.
Okay. I had just a couple of items then. One is feedback on Dr. Martis. I think that the word around town is there's very few people we haven't met with yet. You have put together a great outreach program, a great public relations program to get out and to meet people, to understand. The feedback that I'm getting is that you're asking them questions that you want to listen to the answers. You're not out there trying to tell them things, and that you're gathering great data. It is clear on the municipal side that you've made a great outreach. The relationships that we're building on the municipal side in the last 12 months has been very good, but just since you've arrived, it's got even greater. And I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing, getting out and about this community, meeting with companies that have been very supportive, meeting with parents, meeting with employees, and just helping people understand who you are, what you stand for, and where you want to take the school district, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
I also, as Dr. Martis talked about, we have a September offsite that we're going to talk about goals and objectives. I sent a memo to the committee and Dr. Martis back in July outlining some of the things we might want to talk about. I've put it up on the counter for anyone in the audience to see it. Some of these things we've talked about, trying to get insight into what a really best practice has changed the education. Look at the success of our music program, the success of our sports programs. Look at how we can take some of that success into the academics. How do we get more parent involvement? We've talked about academic excellence and some of those kinds of things. These are all things we want to talk about at the offsite. How do we engage students who learn differently? And some of the specific issues that we might want to talk about there, excluding those normal areas of responsibility that are part of the job description, such as contract negotiations, turnover, budget targets, et cetera, which will all be part of the goals and objectives. Talking about school safety, talking about establishing a review of the SPED program, talking about the full-day kindergarten and how we might be able to implement that, talking about combating the epidemic of childhood obesity, and lots of things we've heard and read about childhood obesity and the lack of exercise and the lack of physical fitness in schools today. Maybe a complete review of the METCO program and the effectiveness of the program, looking at the school bus program owned versus outsourcing, looking at improving of dropout rates, the drug and alcohol education and enforcement we've been talking about, the district accounting system, the student information, lots of things. I say all that because if there's anybody at home or any employees that have thoughts or ideas that the school committee should consider as we go to our offsite for goals and objectives, please submit them through the superintendent's office. We would like to hear what anybody has to say about things that they think we should be talking about as we establish our goals and objectives. We have said that this process should be public. While we're going to go to an offsite, anything people have in advance of that, we would be happy to take it, discuss it, come back, and then when we establish and we vote on the goals and objectives, that'll all be done in a public session where people will know that their input's been taken into consideration. And so please, if over the next couple of weeks, we'll be setting the date shortly, but if you have thoughts or ideas, please submit it to the superintendent's office for goals and objectives for 2008. Debbie, would you like to go next? Other business?
I have no other business.
All right.
Welcome to the new teachers who will be coming tomorrow. Have a
Wednesday.
wonderful day. Oh, Wednesday. Have a wonderful day.
Katie, I'd like you to go next, and are you going to cover the nurse document that you sent to us?
Yeah, I actually don't have it with me.
I have it right here for you if you want.
Good. Thank you. I did receive some information from one of the nurses, Edna Fuller, regarding the nurses receiving professional teacher status. And I included some information from the DOE website regarding that. And I think that it's important that the school nurses are recognized. And I spoke with Dr. Martis, and he was going to speak with Sharon Kelly, who's the head nurse. So I don't know if you have any information regarding...
We talked about defibrillators today.
Oh, okay.
First things first.
Okay. So we may want to wait until we have more of a discussion with her and the rest of the nurses as well. But this does come down from the state regarding the professional teacher status for school nurses. And I can read just a little bit so that people at home understand what that means. It's the 2006 amendment. How does that, one of the questions is, how does the 2006 amendment affect school nurses? And as a result, again, they'll be entitled to professional teacher status as provided in Section 42 of Chapter 71. And what that means is that a teacher is a probationary employee for the first 3 consecutive school years of employment. So, again, the nurses, after that period of time, they receive professional teacher status. The nurses would then have that same status. So we have quite a few nurses that are nationally accredited as well. And I just think that at another meeting, what I would like to see is have the nurses come forward. I think that we need to recognize them for all the work that they do. I think that they're, I don't think that that the community may know as much as we would like them to know about what the nurses do here in our school district.
I think it's important for people to know that not every nurse can be a school nurse, you know, and
Exactly.
I think it's important for everybody to realize that they are, you know, specially trained and certified in these areas, and that they offer something that not every nurse can offer, including myself. So,
And I think they can speak more to that, too, as well.
It's more than it appears.
I would just, I think it's
Okay,
very
yes, I'm
important to make sure that all of our employees are recognized, and Larry, I think your idea is a great one, even up to including bringing them to school committee meetings. I would also, Dr. Martis, appreciate if you could also check with our attorney. Obviously, I'm sure you'd already do this, because the way we recognize nurses as we recognize all employees is very, very important. The professional status, it's very clear from the DOE that most of this will be determined based on litigation in court cases. And I do believe that professional status is a negotiated item, and it's not really clear how that, and I wouldn't want to do anything that would impact our negotiating strategy in our next contract, and it may in fact be a negotiated item. It's unclear to me, and it looks like there's going to be some case law, some court cases. So perhaps, as you talk with the nurses, you could also check with Mike Loughran. So regardless, we're going to have to find a way to recognize them, whether it's through the professional status that may need to wait in terms of the collective bargaining.
Katie, anything else under new business? Other matters, I'm sorry.
No.
Right. Martha?
I am very happy to report the policy committee in its entirety was able to get through that whole book. It has gone off to, I would like to thank the publisher. It's gone back to MASC in order for them to rewrite it, give it back to us for us to review it one more time and then pass on it. It was a huge undertaking, and I appreciate the fact that everybody did their homework, used their red pens, and somehow we got through it. I had my doubts, but we were very aggressive, and we did get through it, and I just can't thank you enough. It was a joint effort, and we did it. And on to the next step.
The volume of work we did,
Yeah.
most
It's
school
shocking.
systems take 3 years.
Jim Hardy was
Two.
very impressed with the fact that we were able to get through that, but I think
Yeah.
because we took it all very seriously, we did our homework. I think what's important for people to understand, there was a lot of policies we didn't have.
It's one of the EQA findings.
Yeah, it was one of the
We're so far
findings, and
behind.
it was something
we
that...
knew it.
We knew it before, they didn't have to point it out to us. It's been an ongoing issue. But it was a huge undertaking, and something I think as a committee we should be very proud of.
Absolutely.
Martha, I think we should be very proud of you, too. We're just talking about recognition. You were a fantastic task leader and kept us on target, kept us
I
moving.
cut
and
you no slack.
You did a great job.
I
And
came in here and
that's part
treated
of
you
why we
like
got
I
it done.
treated my 5 kids, and we got it done. So it's a credit to all of us, and I appreciate your kind words.
Anything else, Martha? Kate?
Very quickly, Dr. Martis, if you could just give us a very quick sketch update on the wellness.
Sure.
I had spoken with Dr. Martis earlier. Just want to see if we're on target, if it's still going to be completed this month, or where we are with that.
And thank you for giving me a heads up, and it actually is something that our new assistant superintendent will be tackling as well. I had a discussion with Ingrid Alati this afternoon after our conversation, and she wrote to me. The Health Wellness Committee is comprised of teachers and administrators from all of our levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. We've been meeting regularly throughout the spring and summer, currently in the final stages of completing the program review. As part of the process, the entire health wellness curriculum has been revised and rewritten to fully align with the state frameworks. This was an extensive process as a significant amount of curriculum required development and updating. A thorough assessment of the current available resources and materials being used to implement the curriculum was also conducted. At this point, the committee feels that we need to consider adopting a textbook for use at the middle school level. They've contacted all the other Hockomock League schools to investigate what tools they are using. I know that we'll be asking about Stoughton and making sure that we're looking at that. Meeting is scheduled for the end of this month to review sample textbooks and materials from several vendors. We anticipate that the committee will recommend piloting a new textbook or at least several units from a new textbook, and then recommend purchase during the budget process for the 08-09 school year. The cost will be significantly less than other curriculum adoptions, as we would only be recommending purchasing class sets of textbooks versus individual student copies. And then they're also going to review some critical new research in the field of health education and be incorporating some of this material into the final recommendations. They expect that they'll be ready to present their findings in late September. So we'll schedule them for the second meeting in September. And they should be ready. And that'll give Debbie an opportunity.
I actually answered the survey.
I'm sure you
I got a call
did.
a few weeks ago
And,
from a name I didn't recognize here in Foxborough. He answered all your questions. So I have a little bit of knowledge.
Glencoe, you use a Glencoe product?
We were the yes, we are using them.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
The other thing I would just like to mention, and Wendy, if you wouldn't mind putting it in for our audience here and also the audience at home, we had, the schools and the police department selectmen had supported a educational forum, which led to a community group. Many of us have attended some meetings, but I'd like to officially announce the name is the Partnership for a Drug-Free Foxborough, and they have a almost as good as Facebook. Now, Paul, you have to watch me on this technology. It is a social network website where you can go on. You'll see other people who register as members, and you can ask questions. It's very interactive, and we're putting up information for parents, all kinds of resources on alcohol and drug. In addition, our website has some things for alcohol and drug on it, but this is for the Partnership for a Drug-Free Foxborough, and that's at Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough, spelled Foxborough, O-R-O, .ning, N-I-N-G. If you'd like to log on and take a look at that, they're looking for their next meeting will be in September 13th. We'd like to get the word out on that, and the group is evidently going to be supporting and working with the PTOs currently on Ribbon Week. I'm getting tired, pardon me. And we would like to, the community group, the partnership would like to do a training, and I throw out for the school committee members, they're thinking of doing a community and parent forum, and they'd like to try that before, sometime in November, before Thanksgiving. The group will be working with Wendy to see if there are a couple district dates where the auditorium might be available. And we're thinking of using the training that Dr. Martis, the trainer, that was recommended to us by the district attorney, who does very specific groups for police, very specific groups for teachers. We're going to have her do the piece for parents on alcohol and drug awareness.
That next meeting, September 13th, held at the high school?
At the high school. They've actually been meeting in the media center. And the last thing I'd just like to mention, I know Paul Jackson's done a wonderful job on pictures. We've talked about the opportunity of taking a look district-wide. We used to do this district-wide, and now we were kind of moving towards letting each PTO do their own thing with school pictures. Again, we've had parents and advisors for the high school yearbook come to us at the end of the year and tell us how difficult it is. We don't want to have advertising. They're not allowed to solicit on advertising. Our PTOs do a phenomenal job. They're not in a position to negotiate something that could be done for the high school, or a good package for either our yearbook or for our graduation or other pictures. And I just think it's time. Each year I hear from parents, and the cost, parents are spending $300 or more on pictures. And I'm talking, if you've got more than 2 children in the system and you want the standard package, you're talking big money. And if you have a student, a son or a daughter, who's graduating, between the yearbook pictures, their sports team pictures, and their graduation pictures, you're spending hundreds of dollars. So I know we're very busy, but if we're going to go back and not do a district-wide, but assign day-to-day management of picture taking by the PTOs, I'm all for that. But could we please make sure we have a district-wide bid so that we know we've gotten the very best price, so we can tell parents and people that. And I don't know how others feel. I know that Mr. Paul's been done phenomenal things for us, and he's been very overburdened. If there's not a consensus on this, then I'd like to drop it. But if there is a consensus that we'd like to do that, I'd just like to know. Are there any objections to doing that?
I don't hear any.
So would it be then to go for a bid for district-wide picture taking?
Let me, this is an area I actually haven't really delved into very often in other districts, so let's try to find out what other districts do before I'm not sure the bidding process on this is the right, I'm not absolutely sure it's the right venue, because I've never seen anyone bid on it in other places.
Well, we talked about it at our last meeting, and I think it's unfair to ask Paul to do work if we're not going to do it, and he mentioned a bid would need to be done, but...
Let me find out what other districts do, and I can come back and figure that out.
If we could do that, I think it's important.
I've never bidded in the district, so I don't know what that, I'm not sure exactly what that what that might entail, and when you,
Well, because you're not
when you
bidding,
bid it,
you're not bidding a
it's
total amount.
it's a different service
it's
at each level.
Yeah.
We've always had one
So-
vendor, okay, throughout all of our buildings for our annual school pictures where parents can buy. But we also have a vendor who comes in and does the yearbook, and then we have, that may or may not be the same vendor
That's what I
that
mean, it's
does
a different
the
set of,
graduation.
it's a different set of
I
criteria,
think it's time that
so
we take a look at that.
I don't know if you can do, yeah, I'm not sure that.
Maybe there is one
A bid may
person
not
does
be
it all the
required.
No, we
I
can
guess,
find, but we can find out.
is
what's
anyone
on.
in disagreement? Is there anyone doesn't agree that we should look at what our strategy is for this?
We can look
Sure.
into
No,
it.
we'll take, I think the superintendent has offered to do that.
Absolutely do that.
Super, thank you.
Did you have anything else, Kate? Just one last item, Paul.
Debbie has an answer.
Debbie has an answer.
Actually, I don't think it's a bad idea to look into it because you may not want to do it, but we
Right,
just
that's what I
happened to have just met with a new company that provides it, and it's supposed to be a really good quality product, and they are going to work on the yearbook as well, so they're going to bid district-wide, so it's kind of a coincidence that you're talking about this.
Because
So
it is
it might
possible.
not be what you want, but it's not always a bad idea to look into it.
Right.
Right.
One final thing, Paul was going to mention, and I think he forgot. Kate reminded me when she mentioned PTO, but we have a new sign at the IGO school that was donated by the PTO, and it is a very attractive new sign, and it replaced a really old, crappy sign. And I want to acknowledge the PTO for replacing a very, very old, beat-up sign with a very attractive new sign.
Thank you, PTO.
Yes, thank you.
I did.
Actually,
Did you have one other thing, Paul? Okay, go ahead, Paul.
We recently were made aware that Avery Dennison Corporation was making some notebooks and assorted office supplies available to school departments, and given that Michael Leary's favorite expression is, "If it's free, it's for me," we pursued this. We pursued this. And today, Mr. Leary and I went over to Holliston to the Avery Dennison warehouse and procured 6 pallets of notebooks and then 2 pallets of assorted office supply type things such as glue sticks, labels, and some other items. So I'd like to thank Avery Dennison for supplying, providing those supplies for us, and then also would like to thank Medway Oil. They provided us a rack body truck that took 6 of the pallets with a driver, and they went over, picked it up for us, and brought it to Foxborough. One of the problems that Mike did have is, even though it was free, he didn't have really a place to store this. So we pursued other avenues, and Bob Swanson agreed to provide a trailer down at the highway barn, and the 6 pallets are now stored down there, and a number of the highway workers helped us unload, and I shouldn't say helped us, I really didn't do anything. But they unloaded the truck and got the pallets into the trailer for us, so we did let Andy Gallen know that we would make available notebooks to the town, since we did have 6 pallets, and we also made mention of the fact to Avery Dennison that in the event that there were more things like this available, please keep us in mind. So,
they have an office furniture line.
Anything else, Paul?
No, that's it.
All right.
Great, perfect.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at approximately 10 o'clock. I have a motion from Martha, I have a second from Katie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.